All of our productions at GCTV are sponsored in part by Bay State Health, providing the care you and your family need when you need it close to home. Visit them online at baystatehealth.org. Greenfield Savings Bank. Visit them at 400 Main Street in Greenfield. Call them at 774-3191 or go online to greenfieldsavings.com. Greenfield Community College, providing access and excellence in higher education in the Pioneer Valley. Visit them at gcc.mass.edu. The Hammond Family. The Hammond family are longtime supporters of Greenfield Community Television. New Fortune Chinese Restaurant on the Mohawk Trail in Greenfield. Visit them online at newfortunema.com. Call them at 772-0838 and check them out on Facebook. Real Cleaning Services, cleaning Hampshire and Franklin County since 1972. We don't cut corners, we clean them. Check them out online at realclean.com. Call them at 413-422-1143. People's United Bank, located at 45 Federal Street in Greenfield. You can call them at 774-3713 or visit them online at peoples.com. The Solar Store of Greenfield, replacing fossil fuels and nuclear power one home at a time. Visit them at 23 Fisk Ave. Call them at 413-772-3122 or visit them online at solarstoreofgreenfield.com. Thank you to our sponsors for supporting all of GCTV's productions.
We're going to call this meeting to order. Welcome, everybody. It's September 19th for the 185th regular meeting of the Greenfield Town Council. This meeting is being recorded, videotaped, and broadcast. If any other persons present are doing the same, you must notify me at this time. Oh, hi. Recorder? Yep. Oh, okay, thank you. And so the clerk will call the roll.
Councilor Sun,
Here.
Councilor Lobeck,
Here.
Councilor Alice,
Present.
Councilor Pythram,
Here.
Councilor Dolan,
Here.
Councilor Stempel.
Present.
Councilor Ricketts. Here. Vice President. President Renaud.
Here.
Councilor Mass. Here. Councilor Gilmore.
Here.
Councilor Wheeler.
Here.
Councilor Mayo. Here. Councilor Linovich is absent.
Okay, so we have a quorum. This is voluntary. We're going to stand now for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I'll give it back.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Could somebody please hand me the sign-up sheet for the public comment portion? So right now is the public comment portion part of the town council meeting. So I'm going to call you in order of which you signed up. Thank you. All the way from Boston for that. Okay. Karen Larrabee. And when you step up, if you could please state your name and your address for the record.
Hi. Hi, Mom. Hi, City Councilors. I'm Karen Larrabee, 24 Oak Hill Acres, and I'm currently the president of the Friends of the Greenfield Public Library. Everyone that you see here tonight and around town in our very green T-shirts, in some capacity, have volunteered at or for the library, and the Friends wanted to show our appreciation for all their hard work and dedication by thanking them with a T-shirt. Green shirted folks are members of the Friends Board and volunteers, trustees, library volunteers, and staff, building committee, advocacy committee, advisory committee, and the Greenfield Public Library Foundation members, and are all deserving and very proud to be wearing our very green T-shirts. There are many more that have stood by the library throughout the years. The plan for a new library has been in the works for 5 years, and it has involved over 100 people. I thought it'd be a good idea for me to come to the city councilors' meetings to shed some light on who the Friends are and what our mission is. First and foremost, we are advocates for the library. Just lost my place, sorry. We are a nonprofit that financially support pretty much all the library's programs and events, including Mother Goose is on the Loose, 1,000 Books Before Kindergarten, First Wednesday Speaker Series, Experience the Book events, Teen Pizza and Movie Night, book discussions, tween and art clubs, summer reading programs for both youth and adults. I could go on because we support over 350 programs and all the events are free. Your best bet is to see all that is offered is to go to the library's website. In order for all this to happen, we fundraise throughout the year conducting book sales, raffles, and an annual appeal. We also fundraise with sponsoring an awesome poetry contest and a fun-filled spelling bee. Recently, over 50 of us participated in the Franklin County Fair Parade, and we were greeted warmly with "We love the library" shout-outs along the route. Please come by the library to see for yourselves what a popular and vital institution the Greenfield Public Library is. It's not your grandmother's library, and now that we have a $9.4 million grant, it should not be housed in an inadequate facility. Thank you. I appreciate all your dedication to our city.
Thank you, Karen. Susan White.
My name is Susan White. I am a new Greenfield resident, relocated from Boston, and before that, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Since I moved here with my family, I have not looked back, only wondered why anyone would want to live anywhere else. First, I want to say thank you to all the city council members for your public service. It matters so much. I'm grateful to be here in this forum of public discourse. I moved here 5 months ago after accepting a position as the Treatment Center Director for Healthcare Resource Centers Clinic on Shelburne Road. HCRC is a methadone clinic providing both medical and clinical counseling services for people affected by substance use disorder. At HCRC, we are committed to provide excellent frontline support that is medically supervised and highly engaged with each person. We provide services to over 200 people 7 days a week. These individuals come from all walks of life and are our parents, our grandparents, our sisters, our brothers, our children, our partners, our spouses, our neighbors, our friends, and many individuals who we do not know. Getting well from addiction to heroin, fentanyl, carfentanil, or any kind of combination is difficult. It takes 100% effort by the person suffering from the addiction and from us who deliver care around that person. Recovery and a commitment to stay free of opioid use is not a journey for the faint of heart, and it is absolutely possible. Every week, I see people choose to redirect their lives to healthier behaviors and more normalized functioning. I represent a team of professionals who are deeply committed to create structured pathways for people to get well and to stay well. We understand that different treatment avenues work for different people impacted by addiction to opioids. At HCRC, we have a strong collaborative attitude toward a wide array of services provided by our many partners in this community. I am a grateful person who's a member of the Franklin County's Opioid Task Force. We expect to move to a larger site in the next 8 months. However, it has been more challenging than expected to secure a location. Stigma remains prevalent about methadone and treatment for those affected by addiction. However, we plan to remain in Greenfield and are confident that a site will open up soon. And for the record, I want to state that we are good neighbors. I have brought along cards with the clinic telephone number to be shared with anyone here or anyone you know who may need help, and also HCRC brochures that describe our services, if you'd like to share that with anyone also. Thank you so much for listening. I'm glad to be a member of this community.
Thank you, Susan. Welcome. Roxanne Wiedegardner.
Good evening, councilors.
Good evening.
Roxanne Wiedegartner, 85 Hastings Street, Greenfield. I want to speak tonight to 2 items on your agenda. The ordinance enabling religious organizations to provide shelter for the homeless, and reconsideration of the public safety complex vote, and the proposed resolution regarding the fire station. With regard to the first one I stated, the ordinance enabling religious organizations, I have no problem with the goal of the ordinance. I do have many problems, however, with how it's written and the process by which it's being brought forward. First, the process. While the town council is certainly authorized to bring ordinances forward, there's a statutory process by which this is done that involves the planning board, if it's a zoning ordinance, which it appears to be. And the ordinance cannot be enacted by the council until the planning board has offered input and vote on it. Furthermore, a public hearing on the draft language must be held. There are also waiting periods for comment by town departments, building inspections, fire department, police department, etc. And boards, zoning board, board of licensure, board of health, etc., that must also be adhered to. So let's be clear that anything you do with this tonight makes it not a done deal, and does not result in a zoning ordinance being enacted. There is nothing here that indicates this is a draft ordinance. I would strongly recommend that you take the mayor up on his advice, or on his offer rather, to provide the advice and expertise of existing staff. That would be the planning director, and along with the planning board. That's what they're here for. And I suspect, given the goal, you'd find them very receptive. This brings us to how it's written. As written, it lacks the specificity required in order for it to be enforceable, which means it provides no guidance to anyone involved, not the religious organizations, not the Office of Building Inspections, not the Board of Health. Some questions it does not answer because it's not stated plainly in the ordinance. Who's the enforcing authority or authorities? What are they enforcing? Those need to be stated specifically in you need to give specific regulations in the code that can be set aside, which part of the codes can be set aside or modified. Which sections of the zoning code apply, if any? That's all I have to say on that. Briefly, reconsideration of the public safety complex vote. I want to say that I am in favor of a public safety complex as a citizen, versus a single firehouse or a single police station. To do anything other than that seems too short term. We'll be right back here in a few short years looking at locating and funding a new police station. While that may involve a significant investment on the town's part, the economies of scale over the long term are important to think about. I am also not opposed to the Main Street location currently under consideration. For many years now, people from all precincts, not just one, have asked for a significant law enforcement presence in the downtown area. It's even addressed in the master plan. That said, I do think exploring other locations, either town-owned or for us to purchase, is also very prudent, and there are several out there, none of which are ideal, I'm sure. What I am opposed to is the current deal on the table for said Main Street property. It is strictly a one-way deal that in no way represents the interests of Greenfield other than providing us a location for the complex, and I think you all are very clear about that. Some things I think are worth thinking about and discussing regarding the Main Street property, however.
Roxanne, we've gone over the 3 minutes, so.
Okay,
you can
I just
wrap
have
it
two
up.
small,
Sure,
short points. Has a fair market appraisal of the property in an as-is condition been done? If not, the council should require that it be done by commercial real estate appraiser. And you have my comments, so you can
Thank
read
you.
the rest. Thank you.
Thank you. Jean Wall. Henry Albin, will come back to you, but you're Turner's Falls, so we go through the list of Greenfield residents, and then we come back to Turner's, in case you're wondering why we skipped over you.
Hello. Tonight I'm speaking as chair of the Planning and Construction Committee. Our committee is committed to assisting in finding a solution to the police, fire, and safety building needs, and I am here on behalf of the committee to request that the City Council allow us appropriate time and resources for identifying the proper solution. Time is needed so all options can be pursued. We recognize that individual counselors have strong and different positions, but we feel it is in the best interest of the community to give more time to this decision. We urge you in your votes tonight to keep all options open and allow Mayor Martin to continue to negotiate and pursue a public safety complex. In the end, the City Council will have to approve any lease the mayor negotiates, so there is no possibility that anything happens without a thorough public hearing and a positive vote from the council. At the same time, the Planning and Construction Committee pledges to pursue all other options available to solve this complex problem. Our goal is to look at the timing, the tax implications, and the cost of all the different options for the police and fire departments. Then we want to present to you and the community a financial overview that compares building versus leasing with clear, accurate, concise, and understandable information. The community also needs the facts regarding the bond debt that is ending in the next 2 years. And there should be an apples-to-apples comparison of leasing versus building in the future. We need more time and request that you allow us to keep this active and important discussion going forward and not limit any options that could be utilized. Although the library is not being discussed tonight, we want you to understand that the library can be built on the parking lot next to the fire station without displacing the current fire station for the next 3 to 5 years. So the library project can be approved as soon as possible. Again, we urge you to allow Mayor Martin to continue with his negotiations while the Planning and Construction Committee examines all possible aspects of a public safety, police, and fire building project. Thank you.
John Andrews. And Folks, when you hear the alarm, it just means that the 3 minutes has gone up, and then if,
That won't be that long.
okay, thanks.
Good evening, counselors. I'm John Andrews. I'm relatively new to the Planning and Construction Committee, so I wasn't here when the library was being developed, but I just wanted to come and give you some personal input on a public safety complex and maybe one other issue. First, I do not envy the decisions you need to make on this. This is huge. The need for public safety, police, fire is great, and it's going to be a lot of hard decisions to make this happen. Leasing would not have been my first choice personally, but I'm willing to listen to all options on the table. The mayor's been doing a lot of different avenues of discussion, operating budget versus debt. Do we have retiring debt to make it more fundable to fund these projects? I just had a tour of the fire department with the chief. It was very thorough, and there is a great need. No gender, there's the male-female gender problems up the fire hose towers. Everything in that place needs work. So I'm all for a new fire department. Remodeling that, to me, I agree with the chief, is kind of not in our best interest long-term. The police department, I believe, needs to be downtown. Somebody else discussed that. As today, there was an explosion at Swift Cleaners, and they were responding down High Street on my way home to Canada Hill. It's not their fault they're located on High Street, but a lot of responses downtown, they have to come down that street. So I think long-term, we should look at the police downtown, whether it's this public safety complex or another issue. We definitely need to get them down there in the future, I think. The other thing that I wanted to talk about was the school repairs, the FY 18-136. I guess they were not favorable. That was on Planning and Construction's agenda yesterday. And I believe I heard it can't come up for 9 months. And we got roof leaks in some schools, and I think action's needed. So if there's any way to get back to that in a different way, I would say we should look at that. But that's all I had. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Madeline Malloy. Sure. Sarah Ahern.
Sarah Ahern, 85 Crescent Street. Good evening, Town Council. I am here before you this evening to speak about ordinance FY 19-016 entitled Preservation of the Town Common. Before I begin, I wish to make it clear that my comments are not in deference to the ongoing efforts by many community sectors to address the issue of homelessness in our community, but to the legality of said ordinance in reference to civil rights and liberties guaranteed by the U.S. Constitution, in particular the Eighth Amendment clause prohibiting cruel and unusual punishment, because as long as there is no option of sleeping indoors, the government cannot criminalize indigent homeless individuals for sleeping outdoors on public property on the false premise they had a choice in the matter. In 2015, the Department of Justice heard a case in Boise, Idaho, regarding a similar ordinance passed in regards to homeless individuals sleeping and camping on public lands, and very similar to our own ordinance, including imposing fines for individuals sleeping and camping on public land. The case was overturned, but recently, on September 4th, 18, the U.S. Ninth Court of Appeals overturned the lower court decision, stating, so hold, that an ordinance violates the Eighth Amendment insofar as it imposes criminal sanctions, fines, against homeless individuals for sleeping outdoors on public property when no alternative shelter is available. They went further, citing the third limitation of the Eighth Amendment prohibits the state from punishing an involuntary act or condition if it is unavoidable consequence of one's state of being, citing a case from 2017, Jones, L.A., and further prohibits the imposition of criminal penalties for sitting, sleeping, lying outside on public property for homeless individuals who cannot obtain shelter. Sleeping is defined as an act or conditions that are universal and unavoidable consequence of being human. Any conduct at issue here is involuntary and inseparable from status. They are one and the same, given that human beings are biologically compelled to rest, UN Human Rights Charter. Also is at issue with the Board of Health ruling citing state sanitary code regulations, which by definition referencing camping sites for public use and not individual tents that are staked to the ground, and I'm certain that their ruling would imply that taxpayer dollars would be used to forage the woods for tents, because if not, that would be deemed discriminatory. In my opinion, passing this ordinance would subject the city of Greenfield to lawsuits and a potential Department of Justice investigation as per their original ruling, citing a warning to other communities who pass similar ordinances, as well as scrutiny from our own Attorney General, in which this ordinance is on their radar and we simply cannot afford. Most disturbing is this ordinance would set a precedent for possible First Amendment limitations on the right to assemble and the freedom of speech, which town bodies dictating which are acceptable, which in essence tears at the very fabric of our democracy. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Garrett Conley.
Garrett Connolly, 84 Congress Street. I'm here for a couple of reasons. Two of them are related. The fact that there's somebody with an extra $60 million and there's other people that are homeless are related. And I hope you will avoid privatizing and the move to privatize anything publicly owned from now or in the future. It's not an honorable thing to have an extra $60 million while there's other people that are homeless. And the other thing that I think we really do need a new library, and I hope you'll work hard on it. It's very difficult to stay informed. You have a full plate all the time, and being a citizen trying to keep track of everything that comes in front of you is it takes a little bit of work, even for a person who's not full of responsibility like you are. So one of the issues that's coming up in front of the town, the city, is control of plastic. It's something that's been important in my mind for a while. And this ordinance, I came here to just mention something. I don't imagine that you ever have a chance to think too much about what light is. Light is a bunch of little particles that travel at 300,000 kilometers a second. When you count 1, 2, 3, it has enough, that's how fast light goes to the moon and comes back from a mirror. Now all these little particles, they're a wave if you look at it in another way, if you want to see colors and things and higher energy particles. But all these little particles, when they hit plastic, they break the bonds of these complex molecules that are called plastic. Now those molecules are very similar to what we would call DNA in our body. They're long, complicated molecules. When the light molecule hits the plastic, when the light photon hits the plastic molecule like a bowling pin, I know it might be kind of boring for some of you to find out, but when that light particle hits one of those complicated atom molecules, it breaks it in some unknowable place. It's beyond our science to even know what is created when the light hits the plastic. But we do know that it often turns into something known as an endocrine disruptor. An endocrine disruptor. It's very similar to estrogen. When these little parts of plastic are eaten by a fish or eaten by a piece of plankton, the fish thinks it's a plankton, or it comes up the train and it comes into our body through our eating, is one thing. We can
Garrett,
breathe it.
that's been 3 minutes.
Okay. When this, it's just that I read the ordinance that's coming up, and in that ordinance, it substitutes thin plastic bags for thick plastic bags. All that does is creates the same situation, only more. And I hope you'll research this carefully. Now, I did this previously, and then I'll quit. I did this previously for the town, and we did get this passed by enough people to sign. So you're not alone Don't feel alone. The population of the town is behind you. We actually had enough signatures, but the mayor
Okay.
changed the rules.
Garrett, I've got to ask you to wrap it up.
Okay, I just want you to know that the plastic is a dangerous stuff, and it's going to go into the incinerator, and the incinerator is down where the brown people are, and the top of the incinerator doesn't get out of our air layer. So just be careful when you're passing this law.
Thank you. Dorothy McIver.
Dorothy McIver, 88 Columbus Ave. So, first of all, I just want to say that I am thrilled that we're getting a new library. I think this is one of the most wonderful things to happen to our town since I've been here, because there's so many things that the new library is going to bring to us, and it's going to be such a welcome addition to have this. And I don't like to consider that this is separate, is connected to the fire station. It's a separate issue. I'm here to address the safety complex. I know the fire station has a lot of problems and it can't stay there. I do believe the library has to be built on that spot. That's what I've understood, unless there's information that has come up I'm not aware of. But I have been reading all this information about this lease, and I'm not able to wrap my head around it in the way that makes it seem like it's a good option. It's, you know, 60 million, I'm being told that it's really only $19.3 million investment, that we should look at it that way, that we have buyout options, but who knows what they mean. I mean, it's not really clear to me what we're really getting into. I know that this particular landlord has owned this building for a long time as an absentee landlord, and a number of different groups and businesses have wanted to rent that or be in that space, and he has totally refused to cooperate with anybody. He's wanted a lot of money, he's not been reasonable, and it's sat empty, the location on Wells Street. So I'm not feeling like this is the best way to go, and I know that we, you know, need to do something about the police station, that we do need a safety complex station at some point, but I think at this point, we need to see if we can find a place for a fire station to be if we can't work something out that's affordable. We have a lot of new buildings right now that we're paying taxes on, and I think that if we could find a place on town property for now to put the library, to put the fire station, on a piece of property that's big enough that perhaps down the line in a couple of years, the police station might be able to move there. The dispatch services could move there eventually, that we start with that, because that's what immediately has to happen. And I'm not in any committees, and I'm not going to be investigating a lot of this, but I think that it really needs to be looked at from all angles, and not just to make this decision right away to take this lease and go with it without exploring other options. And I think that, having a fire station right now might be the way to go, and knowing that we can get the rest of it later. But we don't necessarily have to do it all at once. We own the building the police station is in, and perhaps there can be some things prioritized that they can do now, and the building will sell for more money eventually. But I just don't think that jumping into this lease is, without a lot more work on this and checking out what other options are there, is the way to go. So thank you.
Thank you, Dorothy. Susan Wogaftik?
Susan Wogaftik, 45 Forest Avenue in Greenfield. I didn't come with any prepared remarks on this. I just feel it's really strongly that it's important that we not have a situation where the library is put at risk because we cannot figure out what to do with the fire station. If we can have a public safety complex that works for us, then we should do that. But at no point should the council or the mayor think that, well, we just can't figure out what we can do with the fire station because we can't do a public safety complex, and therefore it's too bad, but the library has to be put off. The library is the center of this community. There was a letter I read in the paper which was questioning the number of visits to that library. The fact is that there are children who go to that library every day after school because their parents aren't home. And that's where they stay, and that's where they do their homework. We have many people who go to that library because they need they don't have computers, or if they do, they have a handheld computer in their phone, which is not useful to be able to apply for a job. You can't, it's very difficult to do applications on a phone. So this is a central part of our community. It's not simply something that it would be nice to have. And I hope that in the process of deliberating about where a public safety complex or a fire station has to go, that the library is not lost in the process, and that, and I also question, I want to see us own the facilities that we have as a town and not be leasing them. I think it's essential for us to have that security, that we know what we have and what it's used for, and we can take care of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Shannon Kitty.
Hi, Shannon Kinney, 142 School Street, Greenfield. I live right next door to the new community center, and the construction of said community center caused damage to my home, and I've been trying to find some help for over a year now. I was never notified about the construction. The only letter I got was about the demolition of the old school. I've tried going through the construction company, the project manager, town hall, and nothing. I've been waiting weeks now for any word from the construction company's insurance company. I've had a building inspector from the town come in, and that was about it. I'm looking for some help and to bring some light to it. I know I'm not the only one in the neighborhood who had problems with their home during the construction. They were doing compression work to make sure that there was a solid base to build the building on. And the compression work they were doing was like living in a sustained earthquake for days, weeks. I have a laundry list of emails back and forth to Robert Tedesco, who is the project manager. Every day when they would shake my house, I would email him. And I don't know what to do. I brought letters, I brought the inspection from the building inspector, the report.
Thank you, Shannon. And if you want to get the counselors and the mayor copies of those letters, that would be great.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. David Moscaratello.
.43 Country Club Road, Greenfield. Nice to see you all. A month or so ago, I put in 2 requests to GSET for some financial information, and they sent back estimates to charge me, $85 and $105. And then they asked the state if they could delay the answers. And then I received paragraphed information, and I requested official accounting spreadsheet information. So they wanted to charge me all these hours for this, compiling this work, and then they send me these lengthy paragraphs that probably took more time than copying and pasting the accounting spreadsheet. I mostly want to talk about the fire and safety complex, but what I think is funny is one of the statements in the response I got back. At this moment, there is no single updated, complete, and accurate report in the format you requested. Really? They don't do their finances in an accounting spreadsheet? There's no format and there's no accurate reporting for the information that I asked for? I will continue to talk about this at a later time. I read the article in the paper, and I find it humorous and also disturbing. The city should be seen The city should be seen as a $19.3 million investment, not a $60 million project. That's a mistake. It should be seen as a $60 million project because ultimately that's what we could pay. Even more than $60 million, it could be more than that if the gentleman's finances go up, we get charged for that. On a comparative basis, there is no question that this proposal is by far strictly for a business standpoint. It's definitely a business standpoint. It's a business for profit standpoint. My only wish would be if everybody could put their political differences aside. There's no political differences. Nobody has come up here and ever talked about political differences when it comes to a public safety complex. Most people that have come up here say they want a public safety complex, including me. I think we need one, and I think it's important. But nobody's gotten up here and talked politically about it. Everybody's talked financially about this, and the 60 million plus is a bad financial move. I would appreciate if you would just quote me on that. That's a fact, that the whole project is $19 million project, not a $60 million project. I said that was a mistake, and it is a mistake. I'm not an outsider. I don't see this gentleman walking around town every day. I know a lot of people. Maybe he is in town, maybe he flies here, but he doesn't live in Greenfield. His residence is not in Greenfield. His building is in Greenfield, but his living residence is not in Greenfield, Massachusetts. And he's invested a lot of money and time into his building. Well, he should. He owns the building. It's not our problem that he has to invest money into his building. It's his building. He can do what he wants to do with it. And the last thing I want to say is from somebody that came up here and talked previous. What is the fair market value of the property? Do we know what the fair market right now today of the property is? It could be $1 million. It could be $700,000. We don't know. But we should know what it is. I thank you for your hard work as usual, councilors.
Thank you. Nancy Hazard.
Nancy Hazard, 30 Spring Terrace. I'm speaking as a resident. I do also serve on 2 town committees, the Planning, Construction, and the Sustainable Greenfield Implementation Committee. I want to thank everybody for your work and to speak in favor of continuing research our options to fund both the new library and upgrade our safety services, including fire, police, emergency response. I think we all agree that there's a need, but I just wanted to read a few sentences from Greenfield's master plan, Sustainable Greenfield, which was written by Greenfield residents 4 years ago, and it reflects the 10-year plan. This is from the opening of the chapter, Public Facilities, Services, and Energy. Many of our buildings have served us well for over a century, and we now see an opportunity to create and implement a major long-range capital improvement plan and build new buildings or do major upgrades that embrace the principles of sustainability. In particular, a library that is sized to serve Greenfield and the surrounding community, and a senior center that is healthy and located near the town center, which we have accomplished. There is a need for new fire trucks that are housed in a facility that can accommodate them, and that space may be co-located with emergency services and police. This is an excellent time to assess and update our municipal facilities because of a new understanding of sustainability, and new techniques and technologies are available to reduce heating, lighting, and cooling costs, sewage sludge disposal, reduce stormwater runoff, and urban heat island effects. I'd like to add that this is also an excellent time to make an investment because the cost of borrowing money is very low, as you know. So the question that we're all asking now is, how can we afford to do this? As you know, Massachusetts has offered to fund half the cost of the library, so we're off to a good start. However, I agree, in the newspaper reported that Isaac Mass had requested that there be a big picture financial picture, and I feel there's absolute need for that. So I understand that it's a good practice, for example, that the municipality have a 10% debt. And I can imagine just a really simple graph that has a line at 10%. Below that line are the debt expenses over the next 30 years. And above that, the operating expenses. And to really look at all of these projects together and see, we need to be sure that people need to feel confident that their taxes are not going to go up if we embrace these things. So in summary, please ask the mayor and others to continue to research the options and achieve our vision of the new library and the upgraded safety services, and request of the town a big picture financial report that shows how these expenses can be covered over the next 20 to 30 years. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Madeline Malloy? If anyone has the expertise or knows how to get the air conditioning in the building working, oh, there is no air conditioning. That solves that. I thought there was. Oh, got it.
Good evening. My name is Madeline Malloy. I'm going to scoot that a little forward. There we go. And I am homeless. Currently, I am sheltered over at 60 Wells Street at the shelter there. How'd y'all sleep last night? Good? I didn't. I want to kind of make a round trip here with my comments if I can, because they're all over the place.
Maddie, could you speak up a little bit?
Trying, yeah, there we go. If I can get a little closer. We need a new library. It is imperative because, quite frankly, nobody has any other place to go when it's hot. Nobody has any internet access to fill out housing applications, job applications, or any other such. Library is a huge resource to our community. Plus, it's air conditioned. We love that. We need a fire station because, well, the housing that we have is very minimal. We can't afford to lose any. You know, if you don't have a fire station, well, you're not going to get very far. So if there's a way that we can find to get all of these things to kind of fit together in a manner that can be expedited, because I know things take time, but that's one thing we really don't have a lot of is time. So I want you all to think really hard and really put yourselves in a position of being vulnerable. Because when you do, you might see just how important all of these things really are and how desperate we are for all of it to happen. There's a way to do it. There always is. It takes time to figure that out, but try and do it as quick as you can. You know, we need a place for people to be. We need safety issues solved. You know, if there's a way to get people into places that are safe and, you know, not criminalize everyone who doesn't have a place to be, well, that takes care of one problem for, 5 minutes. But that's 5 minutes. When you've got seconds, 5 minutes is a great thing. So I won't bore you any longer. I thank you all for doing your job. Thank you.
Thank you, Maddie. And we're going to return to Henry Albin.
Thank you. Though I live in Turners, I grew up in Greenfield and work here, and I still consider it my home. A lot has happened this summer with regards to the situation on the Common. Even though those who have been staying there were displaced by the city, issues still remain both about dealing with the homelessness situation within the town and the use of the Common itself. While attempts are being made to help the former, they are, as of yet, not adequately addressing those issues. Removing a problem from sight and then attempting to prevent it from being seen again does not solve anything and will make it worse in the long run. With regards to the proposed ordinance restricting the use of the town common, this council must consider the intent and purpose of the common and whether such an ordinance is in line with the spirit in which it exists and in line with the values of our community. The history of the town common can be traced back to Europe and the village green. In centuries past, they were used as grazing for livestock, as well as public celebrations, meeting places, and communal spaces. They're open to all members of the community. Instead of the mowed grass, tranquil and detached nature we ascribe to them today, they were dirty, messy, and wonderfully alive. A common is not a park. It does not have set hours or set uses. It does not limit who has access or whether your dog is allowed. It does not prevent you from walking on the grass. It is there to be used, and each common is unique to the community in which it grew and evolved. To put restrictions on the common because there is a perception that what is occurring on it is unseemly and an eyesore is to be blind to its origins. In the early 2000s, All Souls Church hosted a 24-hour campout on the common to raise awareness to the homelessness in Greenfield. The only difference between that and what occurred this year is that the people on the common were truly homeless this time around, and therefore the campout has lasted longer than a day. By having the campout last longer than a day, they managed to raise awareness for issues and force the town to actually acknowledge those issues in public and have a discourse about them. The Board of Health's ruling has already put a limit on how long someone can camp out on the common. That should be enough. Preserve the common as it is, a place whose use changes depending on who is using it on a given day. A free and open green where all people, regardless of what social group they may belong to, may gather. The problem that must be solved is not that there are people camping on the common, but the fact that there are people in our community who have had no other recourse but to camp there. What has occurred on the common is but a symptom of a larger problem, and if we collectively work to solve the underlying issues which have resulted in so many people being unable to afford the most fundamental needs, then we will find the symptoms fading away. I implore the town council to look at communities such as Dignity Village in Portland, Oregon, or the Housing First initiative used by Finland and many other nations throughout Europe. Housing First programs in the United States have seen huge benefits when they've been enacted. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, before we move on with the meeting, the public comment portion is over, and I want to tell councilors, it has been requested of me that because we have an out-of-town attorney here for the executive session, to possibly lift the rules of procedure, to put the executive session before everything else. That's not my call. That's if somebody else were to make that motion. I'm not going to make that motion because I'm the chair, and then it would be up to the council in order to do that, or you can not make the motion and let the meeting continue as it is. So seeing no hands raised, I'm going to call the mayor and communications from mayor, town officers, and employees. And at this time, I've also allowed Maury Schmidt and company to come up to the table when the mayor is ready for you, and that you can answer a question. Yes, Councilor Mass.
Madam President, I see the superintendent is here. I also see that Mr. Lunt are here. I suspect the questions for the mayor are going to be much lengthier than the questions for GSET or the schools. I wonder if there might be unanimous consent to take those to suspend the rules of procedure to take those two items up prior to communications from the mayor.
That would require a motion to suspend the rules of procedure.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Okay, so we're going to go with GSET. So what about the attorney? We just keep going. Okay.
Good evening, counselors, and thank you, counselor. I appreciate that, all of you. A quick update for GSET. Build-out continues. We've finished Smith Street and are working in that section of town for the next several weeks, essentially from Lincoln down to Beacon-Field. And we are moving systematically through the core of Greenfield and covering all areas that weren't covered in the first layout of the access points that drive the wireless network. This month marks 1 year in a row of continuous billing increases. We'll hit $40,000 this month. We try to benchmark what that means. That means we'll end up with about 700 customers at the end of the month.
Director Lunt, I'm sorry, could you just speak a little loud? I'm getting motions from the back of the room. They can't hear you.
Is that better? Yeah. Okay. That much better? Okay. We have completed working at Smith Street and are working from Lincoln Street down to Beacon-Field, and we'll continue through town that way for the next several months. We just completed 12 straight months of monthly billing increases, and we should break $40,000 in billings for this month and get to about 700 customers. We try to benchmark what that means for us. Independent study shows that the average, before GSET began, the average cost for monthly internet, which is the service itself plus a modem, was $72. Our average service cost, including the modem, is $47. So we're saving $25 a month per customer, and with 700 customers, that means we're saving them $17,500 a month and over $200,000 a year. That's beginning to get to the point where that's quite a bit of money that's staying in Greenfield, that's staying local and staying to help our own economy. The last thing I'll say is we have heard a lot of requests from people for TV solutions. We are in the final stages of evaluating, and we should have a TV solution ready to go along with internet and phone within the next several months.
Councilor Alice.
Can you update myself and the rest of us on where you are with internet bill paying?
You mean being able to receive payment?
Being able to pay my bill to you via the internet.
You would think we could, but we still can't. We run a program called IP Pay, and we do know that we haven't done it, but we also know that there were basic underlying systemic issues that we needed to be sure were upgraded to make sure that we could continue to provide service, and we simply prioritize them first. It's not like we don't know that that's important. We just have a certain amount of resources, and we plan out pretty carefully how to deploy them. And we thought network stability was more important in the short run than that. It will happen, but it's probably going to be 3 to 5 weeks before it happens.
Councilor Stemple.
I like to use the microphone. So congratulations on hitting 700. That's awesome. I'm one of those who's still waiting, but that's not my question. Anxiously waiting, can't wait. So you kind of gave me a little bit of a look into currently if this projection of 40 grand a month stayed the same, what your annual revenue would be. Do you have any insight into what your FY19 operating costs would, it looks like for that?
Well, what we do is we project through, we anticipate, given our current rate of growth and extending that forward, that we'll continue to add anywhere between 2,500 on the low end and 5,000 on the high end in continual repeat billings every month, which means we should end up this fiscal year somewhere in the 70,000s range a month. That would, on a month-to-month basis, make us break even. It's a harder pull for us to get to breaking even for the entire year, considering where we started. But the plan for us is to every month have a higher floor of billings, because once you sign people up, you bill them every month. And so just adding new customers in and then going back and trying to add more billings by offering, we hope, a TV solution that people will like is really the foundation for us. And it's just an accretive process where we're thinking that we're going to end up somewhere around $750,000 in billings that are strictly related to residential, and then we have a few other sources of income there too.
So you anticipate with your high growth figures that you would be break even in FY19?
Yes, it depends on how the bonding and the debt goes, but that is what the plan is, yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Councilor Mass?
To follow up on Councilor Stempel's question about the break-even point, how many customers does that represent? Ballpark.
Ballpark, it represents about 1,400. We're about halfway there. About.
The second question I have for you is I had a constituent reach out to me today about having difficulty finding hours to volunteer within the community under the senior worker program, and I'm wondering if you could utilize senior citizens and veterans under the senior worker program to do that simple marketing where you're hanging door hangers. Is that the kind of thing that you could use, and would you be willing to reach out to the Council on Aging to effectuate that?
Absolutely, we would. We already are working with the life skills program with the schools to try to have people come and help us, but we could use all the help we can get, and I'll be sure to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor Stemple?
Just running some quick numbers. Congratulations, you're more than halfway there in terms of customers. So, yeah, keep doing the good work.
Thank you. Anything else?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Superintendent of Schools.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Can everyone in the back hear me? Thank you for the opportunity to present my brief remarks a bit earlier. I do appreciate it. I do have a couple of announcements for you on behalf of the schools, and I also will share some comments from the school committee chair, who could not join me this evening, but asked me to relay a few points. I'll start with some exciting news relative to grants in the school department this week. We had a very exciting start to our week with the Attorney General asking Greenfield to support the launch of a new prevention curriculum, and at the same time announcing a $20,000 grant to the Greenfield schools in recognition of our prevention curriculum work and to expand that. So we were awarded $20,000 to add another component to our prevention curriculum in our middle school. And I'm really excited about this because it's recognition of the good work that's been happening here in Greenfield for the past several years with our evidence-based curriculum in the middle school and the high school. And to be able to highlight Greenfield's work at an event that has this level of impact is really exciting to be able to be a leader in that work. At the same time, earlier this month, we were awarded a $625,000 grant. This is the Drug-Free Communities Grant, and Greenfield has partnered with the COG on this grant. So the FERCOG is the fiscal agent, and it's a 5-year federal grant. And it's a really exciting partnership which will allow us to continue the Communities That Care and the Safe Schools, Safe Streets Coalition that has been working to bridge the community and the schools and supporting and finding important ways to impact the lives of young people here in Greenfield. This is really potentially life-saving work that reaches out and builds connections with our young people. And this kind of work for our children is quite impactful. So we're really excited to be able to continue and expand both of those important initiatives. A few notes from the school committee. I was asked to share that the superintendent evaluation has been completed and that they are holding a workshop next Wednesday, September 26th from 11 to 1 a.m. working on school committee goals, and that they're in the process of, in a related project, setting goals for the superintendent and goals for the school committee. There was discussion of and an effort to better coordinate the work of the council and the work of the school committee. So the school committee did vote at their last meeting to receive draft copies of council minutes when available so that they can continue to review and communicate between the two bodies in a way that allows the committee to work closely with the council. And if there are questions, I'm happy to take them.
I just have one question. What is the curriculum preventing?
So this is really designed to promote healthy choices. It's geared towards social emotional development. So sort of unlike the Just Say No campaign that many people are familiar with from many, many years ago, this is really geared towards helping young people make healthy choices, know more about themselves. And the research shows that this works across all domains, so academic, career, social, and social emotional, but also has a strong drug prevention component. So there's a lot of evidence that shows that young people that engage in these kinds of programs have less alcohol consumption, less tobacco consumption, less cocaine, meth, marijuana, you name it. And here in Greenfield, our rates of alcohol and drug use among youth have dropped quite significantly. One thing that we're working on right now is vaping and juuling, which because of some very good marketing on the part of some manufacturers has had a pretty significant impact with young people nationwide, not just here in Greenfield. And so our health teachers and our coalition is targeting that in specific right now.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I don't think there's any other questions.
Congratulations. Thank you.
Congratulations. Okay, so now we're going to have communications from the mayor, town officers, employees, and at the same time, whenever the mayor wants, the mayor can call up Maureen Schmidt.
Good evening, Madam President and
evening.
councilors. I have a brief report on a number of different topics. Let me first state that very public thank you to Lane Kelly, our retired finance director, who is unretired. However, she volunteered to come back at no cost because she loves Greenfield, and she is an enormous help to us at this point. Even though she's across the Atlantic at the moment, and we have not been in touch with her, guaranteeing her disconnection time for 2 weeks in Italy. We have, she's put together a report for us, and let me first address some of the projects that are ongoing at the moment. First, the Olive Street parking garage. It is still on schedule and within budget. We've deleted some alternates and options within that original design. We're looking for an before Halloween opening. Definite date is not set, but it's somewhere maybe between the 24th, 25th, and 26th of October. We've maintained, Greenfield and its leaders have maintained a close relationship with a number of various departments within the state. This past budget season, with the enormous help from Representative Paul Mark and Senator Rosenberg, we've been able to receive allocation of $8.9 million for improvements in various initiatives in the city that include the Wiley Russell Dam, the dredging of Highland Park, the anaerobic digester construction, the First National Bank rehabilitation and consulting, and 34 Riddell Street, the municipally owned property of the town. Those are all in different phases of beginning, and we'll report on a monthly basis. Excuse me. Berkshire Gas. If you've noticed, our roads are being ripped up by Berkshire Gas across the town. They have kind of dedicated to meet a goal and have Greenfield be one of the first communities in the state to be 100% relined with their replacement of gas lines. What makes it so interesting tonight, as I was going to report on Berkshire Gas, and that we had a meeting 2 weeks ago regarding the moratorium. The options available for the corporate Berkshire Gas would exceed their total asset of the corporation. So the moratorium is going to remain. There might be some minor improvements, but there is not going to be any release of the moratorium in the near future. However, with the incident with Columbia Gas in the eastern part of the state, I've spoken with them, and they feel that their same type of situation cannot happen in Greenfield. I tend to believe that. You've heard me over the years always mention that as a Berkshire Gas customer, we are at the end, the literal end of the pipeline. So we barely get any pressure at this end as it is. So we're hoping that we'll not maintain that status quo, but that we will get a little increased pressure, but that would allow us to utilize the gas as a utility, as we should. It does have an impact on construction and cost of construction and businesses coming to town. I don't have any definitive numbers on that. We work with Mass DOT towards stabilizing and capitalizing on the pilot program of the rail service. So with the increase in the 2 rail commuter trains in the morning and 2 in the evening, we're hoping that that will become a reality as soon as possible. We're obligated to provide long-term overnight parking in the parking garage for Amtrak. We have some other obligations with them. We've been working closely with DOT and FRTA to provide some funds for combination of ADA work on the intersections of Hope Street and Olive and Bank Row and Olive, as well as the funds that we use of our own Complete Streets money and our DPW money. So that's an ongoing process. There's a lot of rough construction going on right now on the sidewalks and the curbs and Olive Street. We're hoping that'll all slow down in about 3 weeks. I'd like to speak on the reconsiderations you have before you this evening. The first on the Town Common ordinance proposed by Councilor Mass. Let me just say that we're nearing the removal of the caution tape and preparing for new signage on the Common. The new signage is going to address the prohibition of state law for temporary housing, as well as the prohibition of the License Commission for overnight camping as a regulation. That will be enumerated on the signs as to why the overnight camping is not allowed. We will wait on the signs until we see about the outcome of this ordinance. If the ordinance is going to step into a process in the pipeline with the planning board and move through for a formal acceptance, then we will certainly enumerate this particular ordinance on the signage as well. For the public safety, we're going to save that reconsideration discussion for the end of the mayor's report, and Mark is going to address the other reconsideration regarding the auditor.
Yeah, good evening. Just wanted, in your package, you actually have an opinion from our town attorney regarding the town auditor motion. One thing I just want to add, the mayor mentioned with Lane Kelly being back, volunteering her services, we now have someone who's actually closing the books for us. So that issue that appeared to be an issue before she came on does not exist regarding the closing of the books. Because I think there was a understanding that Melancing Heath was going to be the entity that was closing our books. They, in fact, are not doing that. If they were doing that, that would be obviously a conflict, as was noted in the town attorney's opinion. So I just wanted to update the council on that fact. That agreement that was going to be signed by the mayor with Melancing Heath is no longer in effect. And so no actions that was enumerated by the town attorney is being done by Melancing Heath and is being done by Lane Kelly and the staff within the accounting department. So I just wanted you all to be aware of that.
Thank you, Mark. I want to again thank President Reno for allowing the discussion, which is an in-depth discussion on debt and the city debt and how we plan different projects over the past decade as well as the next couple of decades to be addressed during the meeting in October. We will present some preliminary information to all the councilors prior to that meeting. Let me address some of the fiscal year budgets, starting with the FY17. The FY17 budget, as you know, was closed late. The tax rate was late. The final management letter and the final audit was completed several weeks ago. I believe the council received a copy and all the councilors. There were some responses due by the town because of the questions raised by the auditor. Nothing serious, but a request for explanations on a number of issues. We're in the process, the interim finance director is in the process of answering all of those questions and working with the school department as well. The FY18 budget, as you know, is in the process of being closed. The preliminary report is that there are no departmental budgets that are in deficit in FY18, except for one, the snow and ice account. And if you recall, the snow and ice account is the only account that can be deficit spent, and that final number is not set yet, but we'll bring that before the council, and it has to be funded in FY19. There is also 6 to 8 departments will require interdepartmental transfers as allowed by Charter 57A. So we will be bringing those to the council as well. It is important to note that the fiscal year tax rate for 19, the budget we're in now, will have to be done in November-December meeting timeframe. RRG, who's representing our evaluations and the revenue from the assessor's office, will be completed. I met with them yesterday. They will have their work done by no later than the second week in November. So they've been in the process, spending several months putting in the permitting applications that affect individual properties, and they've been bringing that up to date. They hope to have that done within the next 3 to 4 weeks. On the F19 budget, we've had the city cut, or the council cut the city $400,000. So we've been working in 7 different departments, 2 that are virtually crippled and 5 that have gone through a number of different phases of employees moving to new jobs. For instance, the clerk's office, every position in that office has a new employee in it. Might be, in some cases, a previous municipal employee, but now that employee is in a different position. So that entire office, and they're doing a fine job learning and training and working with each other. Then that clerk's office is moving in to, or rather out of the red flag category. We have 2 offices, the inspections department. That's inspections, building inspections, and Board of Health are critical. They are literally crippled. They are behind in their mission. We will be proposing to the council a supplemental budget to put money back into that department so that they can do their job. We are able to move one person from another part of the city to a part-time building inspector position who is qualified, obviously, to do so. The DPW and Economic Development and Marketing and the CDBG are all in the process of changing and waiting for new leadership and advertising and interviews. That also, one wild fly here. There is also one the same for accounting. We've completed interviews for that position and are moving forward with a hiring letter. The other departments, I'm trying to think which ones I missed. So, anyways, all the other departments are in the process of advertising, bringing people on board. And when we go into the supplemental budget, every department will be, their status report will be brought to the council. Lastly, we have, in light of no previous requests, we have, and I've directed RRG, the assessment company, to work on the single classification. They will present their tax rate under the single classification. As always, provide that option on what a different type of factor might be if split tax was considered. But unless the council gives me a direct letter on an in-depth analysis by this company, we're going to proceed with along that line. So, of course, as always, we'll take any questions before the reconsideration for the public safety complex.
Councilor Sun?
Yes, Mayor, I was just wondering how much is it going to cost to park in the parking garage per individual?
Well, we haven't determined yet. It's still in the process of analysis, but it will be less than $1,200 a year like it is in Brattleboro, and it'll be less than $1,000 a year as it is in Northampton.
Yes, and on page 45 in the document, there's somebody took a trip for $300 and some odd dollars, and it didn't say who or where they were going. And I just curious if you know who took the trip and where they went.
So what document are you talking about?
It says someone took trip to, somebody took a trip to, I think it's Montague, through Montague, and the estimated cost of fuel and everything, plus somebody's vehicle broke down and it came to $379.50. And it says start trip, and then it doesn't say where it went in 184 and then through Montague. And
I have no idea what you're talking about, but if you can give me a copy of that, I'll get an answer for you.
It should be in a packet,
What packet?
town council packet.
I'm the mayor. I have my own packet.
Okay, I'll get a copy to you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
I think Councilor Mass is giving you a copy, but we'll come back to that. Councilor Sun, we'll come back to that. Councilor Dolan? And I'm sorry, hang on one second. Maybe the mayor can answer the question now because he has it in front of him.
Let me address that now, Councilor Sun. Councilor, you've asked a question cleverly about one of the let's see, what is requested under the first reading. You have a smile on your face. Is that you're happy how I discovered that? Right. So you wanted, is it customary to discuss first readings now?
No, Councilor Sun, I'm sorry, I didn't realize it was a first reading question too. So we can hold off on this until when we're actually voting on it.
Yes, I can wait.
Okay, thank you. And so we will move on to Councilor Dolan.
I want to preface this by saying that I really appreciate Lane Kelly's work, and I feel very confident with someone like that in the position, and I'm glad she decided to come back. The situation, I just want to check, because it seems irregular to me that she is not receiving a paycheck. Is that correct?
Lane Kelly, yes.
She is not receiving a paycheck.
She is not.
Is she a town employee?
She's well, the attorney's here. Yeah, she's a town employee.
So can she be said to have a fiduciary duty to the town in her role as director of accounting?
Can she say that again, Councilor Dolan?
Can she be said to have a fiduciary duty to be obligated to protect the interests of the town?
So I can't answer that, but Attorney Quinn is here. Maybe.
I'm not aware of all the. Sorry, I'm not aware of all the facts, but does she have a fiduciary duty? I suppose really depends on what the agreement was or the understanding was. It depends on what the agreement was or what the understanding was when she was brought on as a volunteer in this capacity. So I'm not sure if there was anything executed, any documentation or any correspondence that went between her and the mayor. But I would say that, generally speaking, if she was agreeing to undertake some kind of effort in terms of looking at reviewing documents, reviewing financial documents, there'd be some expectation she would have a duty, a fiduciary duty. But again, a lot of it depends on what was actually discussed with her, which I'm not privy to. So.
Any follow-up?
Yeah, can I follow up? Just obviously Lane Kelly, a very competent individual. I'm just curious, why did she opt not to be paid for her time? Or was that, how did we come to that arrangement?
She volunteered to not be paid, but no one better than her to answer that question when she comes back.
Councilor Mass, then Councilor Mayo.
I have 3 questions, Madam President. My first question, Mr. Mayor, we discussed when we were out at the MMA meeting a question about whether or not quasi-volunteers, quasi-employees in the senior worker program are viewing and signing the sexual harassment policy of the town. Were you able to make any inquiry? I know it was just earlier this week. I don't know if you've had an opportunity to make an inquiry as to that.
I did on that specific reference that you had made, and that's in process. They had already contacted HR, so that was already in process. But our discussion was very constructive in that it caused me to think about a number of other hirings in a way that we have volunteers work for the town. So actually, we have a meeting coming up tomorrow with HR and Mark and Lindsay to discuss whether it should be an executive order or it should be a new policy whereby every department that hires or takes in a volunteer has to go through HR, so that we can prepare every new employee who represents Greenfield that they have undergone the mandated flow sheet orientations.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate that, and I wish I had asked that question of the superintendent while she was here about volunteers in the school department as well. It was just a particular question about that program. My second question is, it's been 2.5 months since the planned retirement of our chief assessor, and have you yet appointed? Because we haven't received it, and I don't think we have to approve it. The appointment of a chief assessor to the Board of Assessors, which needs to be a full-time employee of the town? And if not, when do you anticipate making such an appointment?
Right. So actually, I anticipate making the appointment as soon as that the assistant assessor is accepted and begins that position. The only office, municipal employee in that office now is technically a floater, and I didn't want to make the chief assessor the floater, so we have the assistant assessor, which is allowed by the unions for a position in that office. We've advertised, interviewed. That person has been selected, has accepted, and probably next week would be the appointment of the chief assessor, who will then not only be that person, but there'll be great continuity with working with the Board of Assessors.
Thank you, Mayor. Oh.
Let me just add one other point to that. The candidate that the mayor is referring to has been going through the necessary certifications to actually be fully qualified for the position also.
My last question, Mayor, is related to the parking garage. The council approved the parking garage on the expectation that it would be revenue neutral to the town, or cost neutral to the town, that the parking receipts would equal or exceed the cost of the town's portion of the bond payments for that. How long after its projected opening in October will you be able to confirm whether or not those projections were correct, and whether or not there's been any impact on non-parking garage parking receipts?
That's a good question. I was thinking ahead. So that'll be next year before we know what the impact will be on our non-parking garage receipts. The plan for paying off the $2.5 million, actually just, was it last week or the week before? Within the last 10 days, we have spent the $7.5 million grant. So now we are spending our money. And we couldn't stretch it out till it got finished because we do need to spend the last $2.5 million. The plan was always to pay using parking revenues to pay for the bond. And so the parking revenues include not only the metered and the kiosk, but also the parking garage will be added to that. So it will take us at least a couple of quarters to get a feel for what's moving around for vehicles parking in the garage under permits, what's staying with permits, which was coming up in the next month or so, staying with permits in the different lots. So we don't really know the preference for a number of parkers. So we'll find that out quickly. But we can report back to you every 60 days on how it's going. Welcome.
Council Mayo?
Thank you. I have 3 quick questions for you.
Yes, sir.
Can you tell us, or can you update us on 188 Main Street?
Yes, 188 Main Street, if you recall, is Lucky Nails, and it's structurally deficient, and we have an agreement that City Council provided $85,000 for demolition. We've been working with the Mass Department of Transportation. They have guaranteed to cover anything over 85 up to $500,000 for demolition. And we also have $200,000 set aside in the block grant to fix the hole that's going to be there after, how we can address that particular north side of Main Street and develop a pedestrian way from Main to the rear parking areas. DOT took their time to review our request for proposal for the demolition, and they added and modified our RFP. And that's coming back, or has come back to us and going out through the DPW as an RFP this month. Unfortunately, demolition may take place in the wintertime.
Okay, thanks. Next question is, how long do you anticipate Lane volunteering for?
Just 3 or 4 years, that's it. No, Lane has said that she loves Greenfield, but she has rented a place in Florida for 6 months, and she's not going to commute from Florida. So we're looking at probably the 2nd or 3rd week of December would be her last part that she would be volunteering and assisting. We're looking at hiring a finance director November 1st, between November 1st and November 15th.
The last question is, I thought I sent you an email, but I just was looking at my phone. I couldn't find it. So I'll make the request here, and you can hopefully make give us an update or an answer at next month's meeting. I thought I asked if we could get a report on how much the town had spent on the most recent homeless issue on the town common, is how much money it's been spent by the town in various capacities. But and I thought I'd sent you that request, but I had problems with my email, so that might have been kicked back to me, or it's lost in the email world of lost emails. But I can send you that request again, just so you have it on record, but I just figured I'd ask you now and get that on the record to at least make the request known.
Well, I apologize,
No
because
problem.
you didn't, I don't think you sent me an email, you asked me.
Oh,
I
okay.
remember that.
Okay.
So you asked me about that, and I have not put it together. I know DPW has spent less than $1,000.
Okay.
But we've got other people that have been involved for a while. But I'll gather that and get it back to you right away.
All right. Thank you.
So MJ,
Vice President Ricketts?
Yes, good evening, Mayor and Mark.
Good evening.
2 quick things. Just dovetailing off the question about homelessness, I would just like to give my thanks to all the work that MJ Adams has done, and please convey, I hope from everyone on council, that I think she stepped into it in a huge way and it's done a great job. My other question is about the John Zahn Center, and I just wondered if other groups have been beginning to use that, or our meeting space, or maybe the kitchen facilities, and have we gotten, is there a process for like requests that come forward for that?
Yeah, first, other groups have been using it. I've just received another request from the DAV for their regular meetings on Thursdays, once a month. And I should have mentioned it earlier, on October 24th, the Mayor's Municipal Association will be meeting in Greenfield at the John Zahn Community Center. So there'll be 25 or 35 mayors there that day. And Dr. Ruth Potee is a guest keynote speaker. She's going to speak on, obviously, opioid treatment and addiction. And we're going to be bragging about the fact that we are a center for addiction treatment and have been able to be part of the opioid task force, which really Chief Haig, John Merrigan, Sheriff Donnellan have all been so active in promoting the awareness, like I think it was 4 years ago maybe at this point. So the leadership is really in Franklin County and the opioid task force, and the fact that we were able to take a bankrupt tax title property and provide the first residential treatment centers in Western Mass was very helpful.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Councilor Stemple?
Thank you, President Reno. I have a few questions. The first one is about the garage. So once the garage opens, idealistically at the end of October, will other spots remain? I know that we're hoping that folks will purchase monthly passes for the garage, but will there be less expensive options outside of the garage available to courthouse or other employees of downtown?
Yes, so it'll be linked to, the first is, amortizing the $2.5 million with the revenue from parking throughout town. And then the further away, the strategy has always been the further away you are from the center of town, it's less expensive to park. The kiosk will stay the same. We're still 50 cents an hour, I think it is. I pay $40 when I go to Boston for 5 hours. It costs $40 to park. I guess it's all relative to where you are, obviously. We've been analyzing and bringing up to date the cost of parking in Brattleboro, Amherst, and Northampton, primarily because they're 3 cities near us. They have parking garages and they have experienced parking systems. So we've been following that. We intend to offer different tiers of parking for price-wise, as well as not giving permit parking to every space that exists. So there's always going to be open spaces at each lot and at the garage.
Thank you. We're not Boston. I work in Boston now. We are not Boston. Things are a lot less expensive here, and people make a lot less. So don't use that comparison.
Yeah.
But then secondly, I think it's one thing to compare and contrast with other communities, but it's more important to really hear the stories of the individuals who are paying for the parking. Folks working at the courthouse making under 32 grand a year, $450 or $1,000 a month is a lot of money. A 35th of someone's paycheck every year, and that's gross paycheck, not less taxes. My second statement isn't really a question, but I kind of have a situation with Berkshire Gas ripping up our roads. I use Conway Street as an example. They repair the road, but then over time, the roads where the patches are deteriorate. I have a nice bumpy ride home on my way home at the north end of Conway Street every day. So is Berkshire Gas acknowledging that they are causing this damage to our streets? Is there any type of reparation they can make? Have we requested something? We don't have all the money in the world to make up for their lack of knowing where their pipelines are. So is there anything that we can ask of them to kind of supplement as we try to make our roads safe and drivable and walkable and bikeable, wheelchair access and strollers safe for everybody?
Yes, and I've had the same observations you've had. We've had several conversations with Berkshire Gas. We've changed some of the parameters by which they're going to choose what street to repair and replace the pipeline, what pipelines will be abandoned, what will be removed, in addition to the regular process by which they replace a trench with a 3 or 4 foot patch. Is going to change to half a street. So they will do a half a street rather than putting the patch down one side. We're expecting that to be a better seal when we do half a street rather than doing two sides of one 3-foot trench patch. We'll see how that works, but that's been a problem in that, after a winter of plowing, we end up replacing it ourselves because their patch didn't hold.
Yeah. And let's just hope that they'll never touch Silver Street. And then I have 2 more things quickly. The John Zahn Center, you bring up the beautiful kitchen. What is the status of the lunch program there? I don't know if that's more so the community center. I know that there is some, there's some, not maybe legislation, but we used to have a free lunch program for seniors there, and I feel like that was a big impetus for me voting for the community center, was to have a safe place for seniors and other community members to have a free lunch, a free meal every day. And I don't think it's really happened yet. So do you know anything about that and when it might be coming back?
I don't. I know we did not have a free lunch program at the Weldon for several years.
You're right.
The Life Path or Home Care, Franklin County Home Care, split with that program maybe 8 years ago. We have, from what I understand now, Poet Seat provides 1 meal a week, Poet Seat Nursing Home, and I don't know if other groups have come in. I think Just Roots has been there sometime, so I don't know their regular schedule for lunches or meals provided, but that's a good question. I'll have Hope get back to the council on what's scheduled.
Great, and that leads me to my last question about Just Roots. I know that they've been working for a while to solidify a long-term lease agreement with the town, and I know it's been stalled. I think our town attorney has been very busy lately. Is there any estimate as to when that might be executed and next steps for Jessica and Jay can kind of just be done?
Right. It's not easy. It's not a regular lease. You've already approved the lease in the past. I have several concerns, and I've expressed them to Jay and Jessica, and we support what they do. We support the barn and renovating the barn, opening up their fields. I'm not so sure how we are able to provide our community asset to a 501c3 who's then going to sublease their land to a developer to build solar array, and then they receive the benefits from the lease and the solar array. So usually we receive the benefits for things we do on our land. So I'm working that out with Attorney Quinn, who's behind me, saying it's coming, it's on the way, but we hope to get that to you for the October meeting. You're welcome.
Councilor Dolan? Okay, Councilor Pfeiffer.
Sorry, I didn't realize we were batching our questions. I'll take the end. I was just recalling this week that back in January we had voted, we had appropriated $30,000 to do a reassessment of non-residential properties. And it's my understanding that that hasn't really started with the changes that have been happening in the assessor's office. Do you have a sense of where that falls on the list of priorities and when we might expect that to be done?
Right. So the reevaluation is part of the RRG contract. So they're doing it right now. It's not all commercial in 1 week or 1 month. It's mixed in. Doing the building inspections or rather building permit, bringing those in, doing the sales versus assessed value, working with DOR, analyzing that, and doing reevaluation of commercial property.
Do you have a follow-up? Council Pyfrom?
Question, Mr. Mayor, can you tell me if the cameras around this perimeter of the school are active and being monitored, and by whom?
No, I can't. The central maintenance should be, and Alan Schmidt, working with the superintendent, would be in charge of the cameras and the surveillance. I believe part of it goes to the screens are in the principal's office, if I remember from the construction plans.
Okay.
And I don't know who's in charge of monitoring or who reports any activity.
Okay,
So we can
if a constituent had a question about certain activities, where would I point them to? Central?
I think we have 122 cameras, if I recall.
As long as they're all active.
Right. So let me relay that question to the superintendent and have her get in touch with you.
That would be helpful.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the mayor? Okay, so we can have the discussion now for the public safety complex. And
Thank you.
Robin,
Point of order, Madam President. I presumed we were holding questions for the mayor and his team about the public safety complex until after we finished all non-related. Do we still have an opportunity to ask those questions of the mayor?
I thought everybody was done asking questions of the mayor. Maybe not. Do you have another
Well, I have
question?
questions related to the public safety complex, and I held those back. I don't know if it's appropriate to ask those now.
Sure, yeah, and we can, and while the public safety complex, developers, Robin and Billy come up. So everybody can come up now. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's what you meant. I wasn't sure if he was leaving because I want to ask him questions about this, not them.
Okay. No, who's gonna stay? Oh, okay. Okay.
So,
Would you mind all introducing yourself? Because I'm not sure I know who everybody is, and the folks here might not know who everybody is.
So I'm Robin Provost from Maury & Schmidt General Contractors here in Greenfield.
I'm Billy Walker, Dyer Investment Company.
AJ Brusciano from Greenfield Savings Bank.
Okay. Questions from the council? Councilor Mass.
I have a series. I'm willing to defer at any time to any other councilor who has a question.
Let it roll.
Mr. Mayor, I received a new lease that was sent by your office. What input did you have into the preparation of this lease, if any?
I had very little. I met with Mr. Walker and with Robin and discussed the parameters, most of the questions that the council had at the previous council meeting, and represented our interest. Because the council had voted to continue negotiation and then reconsider after, there was no formal vote not to, so I continued to discuss.
So, Mr. Mayor, just so I sort of understand, is it fair to say that if you go into, if we vote to reaffirm the vote that was taken last month to allow you to continue to negotiate, that you're going to be negotiating from this newest lease, not the prior lease?
Exactly.
Okay. I just want to make sure I'm working from the right document. The under the terms of lease, number 5, taxes, it indicates that the town will pay all taxes on the property. Can you tell me how much the property owner paid, and Mr. York, you may be able to tell me how much is paid in taxes on that property currently?
Yeah.
Whoever knows.
Well, in the last 20,
No, just annually. What's the last year's tax
well,
bill?
I've paid a little, right at $1 million in taxes in the
Million.
last, over this period of time.
Oh, a year. 1 million.
No,
a
no,
year.
no, 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 no. Yeah, I can't. It's on. I tell you, I can't read your.
Do you know what the property is assessed for? The assessment is?
The assessment. We appealed the assessment that was It was $3.1 million, and I paid taxes on that for a number of years, 13, 15 years, something like that. Kim Levitz, called me one day, and he said, "Do you have any idea how your property is being assessed?" I said, "I have no idea."
What year is this? I just want to know if it's
been-
current. Yeah, is this current or is this history?
The current is somewhere between 1.6 and 1.7.
That's where the million in valuation.
Yes, it's in excess of 1.7.
Going from the town's assessor's information.
And so, fair to say that this is one of the highest valued properties in the community. Fair to say? I mean, Home Depot's bigger, Stop and Shop's bigger, Big Y's bigger, but this is certainly in the downtown one of the most valuable pieces of property. Is that fair, as assessed?
Well, I wouldn't say so. It's in a federally certified blighted area. The building next door to it just had $4.5 million rehabbed on it.
Well, let me ask you this. I hear what you're saying.
Okay.
Is the assessment fair and accurate? Do you believe it is, Mayor?
Well, the tax abatement court said it was several years ago, so it's been, it increases at the same rate all the other properties do.
Okay. And you haven't appealed it since then, correct, Mr. York? You agree that 1.7 million is an accurate and fair assessment of the property currently? Not its fair market value, just as an assessment. It's in the ballpark.
I can't tell you that. I don't know. I don't know Greenfield.
That's fine. Mr. Mayor, this provision under 5 where the town absorbs all the taxes, this is different than when we do tax increment financing agreements where we give discounts, not even sometimes 100% discounts for added value. This is 100% of the value. No taxes will be paid. Is that correct, as I understand it?
That refers to all taxes, increase in taxes will transfer to the tenant.
So this is just the increase over the current valuation? Because that's not what it says.
That's the tax payment.
Yeah, so we're going to pay all the taxes on the property, or waive all the taxes on the property, which I don't think we have the authority to do, but we could pay them. We're going to pay all the taxes on the property, not just the taxes on the increased value. Meaning Mr. York isn't going to pay any taxes whatsoever.
Yeah.
Council Mass, is it Mr. York or Mr. Walker?
I'm sorry, Mr. Walker. York is your. I apologize, Mr. Walker. I
was Mr.
apologize.
York.
Feel free to correct me. I'm wrong all the time.
No. I pay on whatever the assessed value is. Now, assuming that the complex is built, and whatever it's assessed for, I'm going to be charged with that. And it's passed under the lease. It passes through.
Yeah, so you're going to be charged for it, but we're paying for it, correct?
Yeah, it's going right back to the city.
Yeah, and you don't pay a single dime of it in the end.
Real estate taxes.
Okay, I just want to make sure I understand it.
Federal, state, corporate, I pay.
Yeah, of course, but the real estate
That's
taxes
nothing but
you're
real
not paying
estate
any.
taxes.
Okay. 6.4 of the lease sets gives the landlord sole option to get additional insurance without, and the cost being paid by the town. Is there any maximum amount of insurance is there a cap on that of any kind? Has that been contemplated? Or how that will, any upside protection for the town? Not that I think he's going out to get more insurance than he needs, but if there's a question over valuation, are there any limits on that, or can he just take out as much insurance as he wants?
That's not it's an assessed value. And as far as first of all, the lender is going to require as much insurance as it takes to cover the loan. And I think that's the best answer I can give you on that.
So would you be willing to add a cap in here that was as required by the lender? That you,
I have no interest in having it insured greater than what the original balance of the original loan to the lender is.
okay. So that's a negotiable point.
Absolutely.
Okay. I only
In
ask this
fact,
because the
there's
mayor hasn't had any
there's
input.
so many of these points that are negotiable that, but it's, I'm asking for the input.
I certainly understand. Number 7, repairs and maintenance. I see we added a provision related to the contractor's warranty. What I presume that is that Maureen Schmidt is going to have some guarantees in the property, and they're going to guarantee certain things. But if it's not covered by their guarantee, and there needs to be repairs, that's paid for by the town, correct?
That's a fair statement, I think.
Yeah, different portion, there'll be a 1-year warranty, I shouldn't say guarantee, warranty. And then there's individual components of the building carry other levels of warranty, which needs to be flushed out as part of when we figure out all of the different components, what types of HVAC equipment will be in there, all of those items. Those pieces will have warranties above and beyond the year, the roof, those type of things. But things that aren't covered by warranty under this document, the way it stands, you're correct.
And that's negotiated between you and Mr. Walker, not between you and the town.
From my point of
Yeah.
view, yes.
Thank you. And as this lease stands now, the lessor, Mr. Walker, and I'm using Mr. Walker. I realize it's a corporation that's in here. It is you're responsible for the walls and the roof and nothing else, right?
That's correct. It's a triple net lease.
When we were here last time, it was suggested by Mr. Bresciano that there was going to be a requirement that payments be made directly to the bank rather than directly to you. That's not reflected in the lease under the subordination clause in section 10. Is that something you're willing to write in?
Yeah, but that's not a lease requirement. That is a requirement of the lender.
Yeah, but it's not a. But are you willing to write that into the lease so that the town has the protect? Because you have the right to assign the payments. But so if our concern is that you might foreclose.
No, that's no problem.
Be foreclosed on.
We can't, folks in the back are saying they can't hear, so if folks could just, at the table, just speak into the microphone, that'd be great.
Mr. Mayor, under provision 11, the landlord's right to enter the leased property, this is pretty standard provision, the way it's written, but has any contemplation gone into the intended use of the building as a police station and the impact that those rights might have on the police function if a third party can have access to the property at any time?
Right, there'll be areas within the building that no one will have access to without law enforcement.
And will that be specified in the lease?
Yes.
So again, it's negotiable. Mr. Mayor, under section 16, we're given the right to make fixtures and alterations. Do you have any estimates for the cost of the town for the installation of fixtures and alterations? I know some questions were asked about that last time, and there was some indication that some things would need to be updated when transferred over. Do you know what the cost of that is going to be, both the installation itself and any new fixture, any purchases?
Right, no, I have no idea of the estimate at this time. Those are part of the details that the architect and the engineer are going to be involved in if we go to that next step.
And certainly that is it fair to say that could be hundreds of thousands of dollars?
I can't say. I really don't know.
And please, I appreciate that. I just want to make sure we know what we know and know what we don't know.
Councilor Mass, let me interject for a second, just with some different questions, and we'll come back to you.
Absolutely.
Mayor, did the Planning and Construction Committee take a formal vote on the public safety complex?
Not while I was there. I happened to be at their meeting last night, and they didn't vote while I was there.
Okay, so not yet at this point? Okay, I see
Well,
the Planning and Construct, I see
there's
Jean Wall
three
shaking
of
her
them
head,
here.
so, okay. And maybe I have it wrong exactly where it's going to be, but this is for Mr. Walker. What's going to happen to the current tenants? Is this complex going to be on the other side of CDH?
It's the city of Greenfield.
What about CDH?
That's a different building.
Oh, it's technically a different building?
Yeah, this building property starts where the juvenile court facility was.
Okay, got
and
it.
then
All
goes,
right.
as you're looking at it, over to the right. So
Okay.
the only people that are in there is somebody from the town in
Yeah.
where the planning was. But
Okay.
other than that, it's vacant at this point.
Okay. And one other question, has it been talked about to just buy the building for the town? Has there been any negotiations on that, to just buy it and to just,
No, ma'am.
okay. Are you selling? Well,
Am I selling?
mm-hmm.
Well,
I mean, I guess everything's always for sale.
I'm not accustomed to this. Under the lease, the whole purpose of the thing, the way it's structured, is economics, and at the end of the day, the city will own the property.
Mm-hmm.
That's the whole object of the way this thing is structured. And so, is it for sale? It's the city is actually, if the thing goes through, the city is actually buying it. It's a financing mechanism, is what it really boils down to.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Can I ask a question specifically related to that?
I'll let you go because it's specifically related to that question.
Mayor, do you
And I'll come
also
over
agree
to
that
this
this
side. I
is a
can see you guys.
financing mechanism?
I sat in the wrong
We needed to get you more mics.
The lease is the topic we're discussing, and that's the purpose of rehabbing the property.
So you disagree that it's a financing mechanism?
Well, I think the financing mechanism is the fact that, I don't know what Billy's referring to, but the fact that it's amortized and fixed. You know, I'm not in favor of the 2% annual inflation, but those are to be negotiated too. But that's the idea of having it fixed with a buyout option.
Councillor Alice?
We
and
are still
Councillor-
Chapter 149, so we have an RFP in process that explains the conditions by which the lease takes place.
Councillor Alice and then Councillor Dolan.
And so my question, and I'm not sure if it's in this particular one, but there was a section in the other lease, and maybe it was taken out, and you can clarify it for me. There was a section that stated that this was in fact a lease purchasing agreement, which would lend to what Mr. Walker was saying. Do you agree that you were going to interpret this lease as a lease purchase agreement?
It's a lease with an option. The option is to purchase at certain times during the term of the lease.
I'll try to find it. It actually specifically references, or the old one specifically referenced a Mass General Laws chapter and section that is
It
the
was on
same.
the first page, I think.
That was the same chapter and section that we use to purchase our cruisers and to purchase our fire engines. So that is the one that was referenced in the first one, and I'm remiss that I don't have the first one with me. I only have this new one, and maybe it's not in here, but I'll look for that as we go through. My questions were,
So he is correct.
Okay, so apparently
So you are correct.
Yep.
I know what you're talking about. It was in the first lease, and by error, it's in the second lease, but it is to come out in the final lease if it moves. That statement is scheduled to come out. It should come out.
What number is it in the new lease, just so I can see it? Do you know?
Give me a second.
Okay, you can look for that.
Councilor
no,
Dolan, do you want to ask your question now, or are you still going, Councilor
I have a
Ellis?
couple of other
Okay,
questions. that are-
all right, cool. And so, councilors, could you please not talk while other councilors are asking questions?
So it was stated that this is a 20. Let's see. There was $5 million in soft costs, and I'm just curious what those soft costs are. And then the building itself was 26 million. Is that correct? That was what was. Can you go over those numbers again? Because I don't. Again, I don't have everything from last week in front of me. So the paper that Mr. Bresciano gave us had the numbers on
Oh,
it.
you're talking about, okay. You want to talk to that, or how do you?
I'm just curious.
So it's a $19.3 million construction project, which includes soft costs, land acquisition, because you're using the land, construction, and site development. So that is the number for what you'd call hard costs, soft costs.
Right. So what my question is to do an apples to apples comparison for bonding versus this particular option.
Yep.
I guess my question is, what is the building cost to the town if we were going to do it ourselves versus the cost? Because there's obviously profit built in for everyone involved, because that's the whole point of this for everyone sitting there, except for the mayor, I would hope. So that's my question is do an apples to apples comparison, because I have bonding numbers for the numbers that we have for what you are telling us the building is going to cost. And yes, with the numbers you gave us, your way is in fact less money. That's not really my question. My question is, there's profit built in that the town would not have to bond if we did it that way, and I'm curious what those numbers would come out to be. So that's not actually a question to answer, but the building cost itself, there's a profit built in, and then I'm assuming there's a profit in the monthly payment. Is that or in the monthly rent? The monthly rent is not specifically right, but the monthly rent that we would be paying under this lease, there's a profit built in for you, correct? You keep some of that money that is over and above what the actual cost of the building is. Is that incorrect? Well,
You got to talk in the microphone.
I think it might be off.
I
There's got to be a
don't
green
think
light.
it's on.
I'm sorry, I apologize. That's not a fair representation.
How so?
I'm not really sure I understand your question, but I think you're mixing apples and oranges here. I really do.
What? Okay, so let me try and restate my
Okay.
question. The numbers that are given to us under the financing from the savings bank are numbers based on all of the profit that's built into the job for everyone who's doing it. Now, my question is, the town would not have that profit to pay to someone. We would be paying, we would be constructing that building, and the people working on it would be getting paid the money. But when you lease the building to us, you're getting monthly rent, which is how this works. The lease works, you get a monthly payment. If we did it ourselves, that monthly payment, I'm trying to figure out how much more or less that monthly payment would be on a bond, because there would not be profit built into it for you as the owner.
I think that he can address that.
Do you want to try? Okay, wait. Woo.
Just let me first address the estimates that are already involved in the lease. So the $19.3 million rehab of that property, that's the total construction cost. You add on to that the cost of money. That's the only thing that's added on in all of the 8 or 10 bond scenarios sent to you by the treasurer. So,
which are clearly not the correct numbers, because the numbers aren't what we had on our paper that we ran, because the paper is different than the 19 that you're saying.
Right, but you're the one that requested those bond numbers
Correct.
from the treasurer.
I
So we
requested
had no
them-
input into what you asked for.
Correct, and I requested them off the paperwork that we were given, so
Well,
that,
then that's, the treasurer didn't understand your question.
or the numbers on the paper were different than what you're saying now. I'd have to see the paper again, I don't have it in front of me.
Okay, so we've got, and
we just have
AJ
one
has
person
worked on
speak
this,
at a
but just let me say that the rehab is roughly $395 per square foot for the rehab of X amount of square feet. New construction for the town. If the town was to do it by themselves, after they buy the land, they still pay a profit, they still pay soft costs, and they still pay $500 to $600 a square foot. That's the reality of building and doing it on your own now. That can happen, and that's where those bond figures come in. So if you're really going to do a $28 to $31 million project, it's X amount of dollars. And I shouldn't address the finance stuff because I don't deal with that.
I'm not disputing that. What I'm saying is that there is a third party in the leasing agreement. There's a third party involved who is in it to make money, and that's what people do who are developers. They make money. So what my point is that there is some amount of that monthly payment that we would not be bonding because it's not a payment to a developer. Because I don't believe that this is being done gratis. You're making money, correct? You're not doing this for free. Why would you?
It's certainly my intentions.
To do it for free?
Not.
Absolutely not. My intentions are I'm in the business of making money,
Right.
and I have no apologies to make for it.
I'm not asking
but
you.
it's a reasonable.
I'm not asking you to make apologies, but our decision is whether we are going to do it this way or do it ourselves.
Wait a minute. But that $19.3 million includes any money that he is making, though. It's not above and beyond that.
Exactly. So my
The
point is.
above and beyond that is.
Exactly. That's exactly my
But
point.
if you take the $19.3 million and you divide it by the 50,500 square feet that you're getting, the square foot cost comes in under $400.
Right. So I guess the question
So
is,
if
if we're subject to all of the same laws with him doing it, i.e. prevailing wage and all of those laws, how is the square foot cost different? How can that be possible?
I am not subjected to the prevailing wage rate.
But the mayor just said we were subject to that.
May I finish, sir? I have done 3 of these projects for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. The juvenile court, the, let's see, the other one.
District attorney.
And not one time have I been questioned or been. They don't do it that way. There's no difference in the Greenfield municipality and the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
Councilor
Okay,
Ellis.
I'm really trying to understand this, but it says specifically in our RFP that we are subject to both, and of course I have to find it now, that we are subject to both prevailing wage, and I'm not remembering the actual numbers of these laws, that this project is subject to those provisions. So I don't understand how, if we're doing it with a developer, it can be any cheaper than if we did it ourselves if we're subject to those provisions. See, the developer says he's not, the mayor says that we are, and the RFP says that we are, and the crux is, we've just established that this is a financing mechanism, which means we have to be subject to those laws. So I'm very confused. I guess I'll save this for discussion, but those were my questions, and I think I haven't got an answer, but I've gotten an answer.
Okay, Councilor Ellis, Councilor Mass says he has the answer to your question. I'm going to let Councilor Mass go, and then I want to go over to Councilor Dolan because I know you've been waiting for a while.
May I?
Sure. Yep.
I have told the council that I would hold the city harmless from the claims against the city under the prevailing wage rate. I've done it 3 times, and there's no difference.
Okay. Thank you. Councilor Mass, did you want to answer?
I have questions, but I'll defer to Councilor.
Okay, so we're going to go to Councilor Dolan.
I just want to go back a little bit. I feel like you kind of danced around this in an answer. clearly there's a lot of concern about this lease. So would you sell the building to the town at the assessed fair market value?
No.
Thank you.
Councilor Gilmore, I saw your hand up.
Yes. One of the things that we had talked about last month was offsetting the cost by selling the police station on High Street. Have you, Mr. Mayor, have you had a chance to see whether or not we're able to do that? Because it seems like it's not. I know that we can't just like sell that building and take that money and apply it to the lease. It's going to go into the general fund. Have you looked into that yet?
As noted in the lease, $1 million would be put in a special account. And in that account, escrowed would also be the deed. And the interest on the $1 million, which is around $28,000 to $29,000 a month, would then be applied to the rent. Over the period of 3 years, that roughly $340,000 a year equals almost $1 million, and would be applied to the rent. And at that time, when the building is done and the town takes possession as a tenant, the money would transfer. The $1 million would then go into the account. It could either be, maybe the council can vote to put it in the general fund, but it would otherwise go into the sale of town-owned land.
Follow-up, sure.
No, what I was asking is because this is kind of like an irregular situation, I wanted to know if we were sure that this was going to work out the way it was described.
Well, at the very onset, the developer would put the $1 million in the bank. So the person putting the $1 million in is dire investment.
Councilor Mass?
So I do have other questions about the lease, but following up on that question, just to make sure I know when this happened, money's escrowed for $1 million is escrowed. I get that. That's fine. There's a period of time over which before that the transfer. How long of a period of time did you anticipate?
I think 18 to 24 months.
Okay, and during that time, the police move. Is that during the construction period?
During the construction period.
So the concept would be a or close to simultaneous switch from occupancy and transfer of the property.
Exactly.
I just wanted to make sure that the building wasn't sitting vacant.
And then there's a little play space in there because of moving and.
Sure.
Right.
So going back to the lease, and I won't ask the mayor this because you, Mr. Walker, he didn't have input into it. Mr. Walker, I appreciate that you addressed one of the things I was concerned about, which was why would you be upset about eminent domain if the property is going to be valuable? And you put in a provision that allowed the town to take it by eminent domain. You took out that restriction in 22.1, but you indicated that the value that the parties would stipulate, the value would be not less than the purchase price contained in option D. I presume that's because you believe at the end of construction, it's possible that the fair market value as determined by a court might be less than the purchase price. Otherwise, why would you have put that in?
Well, that's exactly right. That's exactly right.
So the property isn't going to be worth as much as we pay for it?
No, I'm not saying that. You are.
But that's why you put it in, because you're afraid that it might not be.
Well, you know, I don't have
It's a
any
downside
control
protection.
over. That's a specialty building, you know, a fire department. You know, I have no control over what the appraiser comes in and says it's worth.
Totally.
So I've got to protect myself in that respect.
Totally understand. I totally understand. But you are in control of what you build, right?
Am I in control of
what gets built?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I am. I'm building it based on the specifications and the RFP.
Are there any other questions? And keep in mind, councilors, we do have a deliberation on it where we can talk amongst ourselves.
I do have questions. Can I jump to the financial portions of the? Well, two questions, two sections. First of all, the option to purchase in this version is based on the town getting a grant for the construction of a fire department. Is that correct?
Yeah, and that came from the discussions that I've had with the council, that I said, look, I want to give you as many options as possible. I don't, if the city were to get a grant, and that's what I'm saying, yes, then they could exercise the option to purchase that portion of the property.
So, but as written currently, and maybe this is maybe this is a mistake of drafting, not intent. The town doesn't have an option to purchase, but could take by eminent domain the property if we don't get a grant.
You know, eminent domain is certainly a possibility.
But if
you
we
know,
don't get a
but-
grant, we can't buy the property according to this lease.
I
'Cause the
wouldn't. I would not. You've got other options in there. You've got.
Where is the option to purchase the property without the town getting a grant? Can you point to the provision?
Yeah, you got a 10-year option. At the end of 10
Where is
years.
that in this lease?
It's in the letter.
But the
Apparently,
letter is
do you
what's
not-
referenced, but it indicates that we can only exercise that letter at Exhibit D if we get a grant.
You're not.
Is there another?
There's two letters that were also sent. So you have the lease document, which has A, B, C, and D, and then you have two letters. One of those letters is for the right of first refusal and for the right to purchase at the 10-year, and the other letter is the letter that gives you the right to accept the offer on the High Street property. So those two letters are what allow for a total now of 3 options for the city to purchase.
Under this lease, are you building a fire station?
Yes.
You are.
Unless you opt out.
Yes.
Unless you opt out.
If the town.
But you got the. I don't think you are.
I don't understand because
Okay, well,
the terms are the same as far as price.
No, if you were to get a grant, you've got the option to opt out of the lease, and we deed the property.
Prior to the 10 years, that's your intent?
Oh, yes,
Prior
yes.
to the 10
I mean,
years,
it
we could
could be
purchase the
tomorrow.
prior property if we get a grant.
Yes, yes.
The terms of the lease are $114,445 per month, correct?
That's correct.
That's a little over $1.3 million a year. Mr. Mayor, our annual budget's slightly over $48 million, correct?
Yes.
So without any of those moving costs that we talk about, the fixtures, excluding that, excluding any increases, which I know you object to, Mr. Mayor, this price represents approximately 2.8% of our annual operating budget.
Have you deducted the 823,000?
What 823,000?
So this is also coordinated with the Mass State Police doing the regional dispatch?
Yeah, but if we don't get that, this is 2.8% of our operating budget.
That's true. So then we might not do this project at all if we don't get that commitment letter from the state,
I thought we were told we couldn't get a commitment letter from the state until we built the project.
till there was space available. So is there space available physically, or is there space available with a contracted or soon-to-be lease signing?
So you indicate that you would not build this without a signed agreement with the state police for dispatch.
This, as we all know, we should all know, that public safety has been discussed for the past 3 decades in Greenfield. It hasn't happened. We've had bumps where we, 1939, we moved the fire department to where it is now, and in 1993, maybe we moved the police station up to High Street. So this only came about now and was activated in the last couple of years because there was the opportunity of, one, getting one of our goals, which was moving the police station downtown, 2, providing for regional dispatch, which has been studied for the last 10 years or so, by virtue of consolidating dispatch for the county with the Mass State Police, and that they would replace They would pay all of our dispatch department costs, hire all of those people and maintain their costs. And 3, the old idea of conceptualizing the consolidation of public safety. So that's how we've moved. If those change, then something else would have to change.
I guess I'm still confused because, and maybe you can clarify this for me. I was told by the chief of police that the state police would not sign a contract for us for dispatch until we physically built a site in which they could be located. If you're telling me that's different, that makes a big change for me. If you're saying we're going to have a contract with the state police before you ask this town council to vote to accept a long-term lease, that's a major change. Is that what you're saying?
So the chief told me the same thing. So they would only go with the police department. They would only go in new space or newly rehab space. They would pay everything of their own within the shell. We only produce the shell. They take care of everything on their own: security, technology, furnishing fixtures, and so on, and then consolidate their operation in Greenfield for Franklin County. If that was not to occur, then it blows the whole idea of financing with the leverage and the special deal we would have with consolidating. So I know it doesn't matter what we say now. It only matters if I have the ability to continue negotiation. If the council votes not to continue negotiation by the mayor, then there's no project there. We got to figure out something else. If the council votes to allow the mayor to continue to negotiate, you brought up at least 6 different items in the lease that are, right top of the tier for discussion, and as well as the finance. You can call them mechanisms or results or incentives, but all of those issues have to be discussed. And then I have to come back to the council with the final document for an up or down vote.
Councillor Sund.
If you'll sell it in 10 years, what's the difference about selling it to the town now? What difference does it make? The town buying it now, and you, in 10 years down the road, you'll sell it to the town.
Right. So the process is mandated by state law, and you have to go out for a request for a proposal. When you do that, you have to dictate what you want. And so we dictated whoever should apply to that, whoever responded to our request had to lease the property, had to follow and give us the square footage that we determined each department needed from the previous studies that the town did several years ago: fire, police, ambulance, EOC. So that's why we didn't go out and ask for somebody to sell us property. So if that's what you think we should be doing, then you need to figure out how to vote and then do so.
Are there any other questions? Councilor Stemple and then Councilor Dolan.
This is feeling a little bit similar to the other long meeting we had. I hear a lot of the same questions going around, particularly about the lease agreement, just as a lease agreement. I'm going to try and shift gears a little bit and focus right now on high-level headlines to the team at the table. What is different from the lease we heard last month compared to the lease that we're hearing this month, just so my colleagues can understand? Just high-level headlines.
You want me to start? What? Okay. The largest addition to this lease is the third option for the town to acquire a portion of the property for the construction of a fire department, firehouse. And the way that it's written right now, that's achieved by a grant being received by the city for that. And if that were to happen, it does make sense to allow for that option to be in the lease. Now, this is still a draft lease, and the thought behind it was that we would hopefully listen and get more information back from council and be able to start addressing some, excuse me, possible other concerns if those exist. And so I think that that's the largest piece, is that. The rest is wordage, concerns over wordage, and I assume there's still some that needs to be worked on. But that piece of the being able to opt out, for lack of a better way of saying it, to a portion and actually be able to build on your own. The city could build that firehouse on their own.
Councillor Stemple.
And I don't know who to ask this question to, but is this the right process, going back and forth at full council meetings, reiterating leases? Because it seems like it's a time dump and nothing's getting done. So, I mean, we're not at the discussion point, and I'll make my discussion then, but I'm just curious. I guess I'm moving into discussion. I apologize. But thank you, Robin, for those headlines. That helps me.
Okay.
Councillor Dolan, then Councillor Alice.
I just have one more question for Mr. Walker, kind of big picture. So, you've stated clearly that you're unwilling to sell at a fair market price.
I'm sorry, can you?
You've stated clearly that you're unwilling to sell at a fair market price at this point. And I have to say that the assessed value of the property at present seems very low to me, especially compared to the assessments that I see on houses owned by senior citizens in our community, which I hear about a lot. So there's not a lot of incentive if this project doesn't go through for you to develop that site in another way. What are your plans for that parcel if this deal actually falls through?
I have some other options, but I don't think this is a place to discuss them. But you asked me what I take, and I may have misrepresented really how I feel. I took that to mean that would I take the assessed value of the property, not necessarily the fair market value. You're talking about two different things.
Would you consider selling the property to the town at the fair market value, which was the question earlier?
There's nothing that's not for sale.
Okay.
Okay, Councillor Alice.
I just need to understand, because I heard previous when we were talking about the fire department option, you said if we got a grant, we could use that to purchase the part of the building for a fire department, but the fire department's already going to be built. No, the fire department's not going to be built.
The grant would be to build the fire department. It would be before construction takes place.
Okay, so we just spent years getting a library grant. I don't see how we're possible. I think that provision is just put in there, and I don't think that the understanding is there of how the grant process is going to work.
It was put in there at the request of one of the councilmen.
Okay, so the fire department, unless there is a grant, this lease only covers the police and dispatch. Is that correct? Unless we get a grant to build a firehouse, this lease covers only the police and dispatch.
No, you're completely wrong.
Okay, so then I'm very confused, because if we get, there's no way, actually that's not a question. So the question is to the mayor, is there any way that we can build a firehouse and then get a grant for that firehouse later on? Do you think that would ever happen?
Do you want to answer that, or do you want me to answer previous?
Answer the previous question. I'll answer that.
Is it okay?
It's up to.
Okay. So the intent or the thought behind that additional option was put in place, as I stated before. The reality of how the project would move forward if, hypothetically, if in the next month or 2 months, this project, everyone agreed to move forward with a lease project. Hypothetically, if that's what happened, there's a period of time that everything needs to get in place before construction can start. So the way that the lease stands now and the money that's attached to it is for the construction of the entire facility. If, in the process of finalizing the lease and signing the lease, it is decided that you want to keep that option available to you. If you believe you're going to look for a grant or other monies, I suppose, to construct that firehouse during the process of design of the facility, which still is going to take a period of time, we would be looking at a way to move forward in such a way that the police and the dispatch could move forward at the beginning of next year, and you'd have an option to be able to kind of opt out of the fire department portion. And that's the best way I can explain it.
Okay, so then I need to ask a follow-up. And that would change the cost of the lease, correct?
Yes.
By how much?
Well, depending on the grant amount. So this is a short, Councilor Ellis, I really don't understand your physical type of reactions to this.
I'm just baffled by
I'm doing
the
my best to
process.
answer your questions.
I appreciate that.
So the idea is that between now or next month and next summer, that we would attempt to get a grant for a regional public safety complex that included communications, and because we are the regional center, to help with the fire department, which would be the last to be built. So then that would be on the same location. By virtue of doing that grant, we would have to have title of the property, and we'd have to do a request for proposal for that to be built. It couldn't be built by the same people that we're leasing from the property from. So is that difficult? Do you understand those steps? So
I
we're
understand the
leasing all
steps.
of
It doesn't make sense to me, though.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's an opinion, and you're
No,
entitled to.
no, I'm just saying, I appreciate you trying to explain it, but it really, there's more and more that this goes farther and farther and farther that doesn't really make any conventional sense to
Well, it
me.
makes a lot of sense. It makes enormous sense. It saves money. It's quick. It offers the state budget next year to put a line item in an earmark to a regional public safety complex. It has a lot of opportunities, but you get zero when you do nothing.
Councilors, I really want to wrap up this discussion. It's 9:45, and I feel as though we're going down a rabbit hole now. So please, only if it's something that has not been asked, and I'm also going to ask that we make sure we're treating each other with respect, because that's what we ask of others. So I understand it's passionate. It's a lot of money. It's a passionate argument, but we get irritated when we're sitting here for a while. So only if it's really a question that is absolutely necessary. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Just in closing, I want to say that the council is going to offer the directions for me, and whatever you decide is how the city will act. Thank you. And thank Mr. Walker and Robin and AJ for being here this evening.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, councilors, for your participation. Everything else. So,
Did any of that make sense to you?
sure. Why don't we take no? Actually, yeah. Counselor, that's great. Thank you. If folks have to go to the bathroom, just go. We're not going to take a break. And if there's a vote and you go, we can wait until you get back. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of discussion. So we're going to move on to the motions, orders, and resolutions. And this first one never went through a committee. Councilor Stemple, will you read it?
Sure. I would love to. So for everybody following along at home, this is page 3 in your council packet. The town council moved that it be ordered that the order number FY 19-014, approval of a new ordinance relative to religious organizations hosting the homeless, previously voted on by the town council on August 2nd, 2018, and vetoed by the mayor on August 17th, 2018, is hereby approved.
Is there a second? Second. Okay, I will speak to this because I wrote it. I'm the one who wrote it, so I just as soon keep the veto. I will go back and work with the mayor's office on this. It was done in haste because it was an emergency meeting, and so please vote no. Any other discussion? Okay, all in favor? Great, all opposed?
No.
No.
Okay, abstain. This does not pass.
We listen really well.
Thank you. The motion fails. Thank you for failing my motion. So, Councilor Wheeler, page 8.
The town council moved that it be ordered that the town council reconsiders the following motion approved by the town council on August 15th, 2018, order number FY 19-015, on a motion by Councilor Stemple, second by Councilor Mass. It was by majority vote that the Greenfield Town Council approves the attached resolution titled Resolution for the Consolidation of Public Safety Services.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, so this needs, we're gonna debate, and then to uphold the original vote that was taken, there needs to be a 2/3 vote.
We have to vote on whether we want to reconsider it first. So we have to take a vote first on whether we're going to reconsider or not.
Okay. So first we take the vote to reconsider, and then we have to read the main motion again. So we can discuss this. Mhm.
Did the motion pass or fail last time?
It passed. Yep. Okay, so I would hope that anybody who files a vote for reconsideration, that we would all vote to let that be reconsidered. So looks like there's no discussion really, so all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? The motion to reconsider passes. Councilor Wheeler, could you please read the original motion again?
Resolution for the consolidation of public safety services, whereas the current fire station is antiquated and functionally obsolete if, is this right? Yeah. If renovation is even possible given the age of the build, no, yeah, I thought so. Where are we here? Oh, I don't. Is it in the packet?
Page 8.
Page 8. Oh, right. Right. That's what I just...
Sorry to put you on the spot.
That's okay. The town council moved that it be ordered that the town council reconsiders the following motion approved by the town council on August 15th, 2018, order number FY 19-015. On a motion by Councilor Stemple, second by Councilor Mass, it was by majority vote that the Greenfield Town Council approves the attached resolution titled Resolution for the Consolidation of Public Safety Services.
Is there a second? Okay. Discussion.
Clarification.
Sure.
The motion, we approved some amendments to the motion, and this resolution in this packet doesn't reflect those amendments. So I just wanted to, this is not the motion that we're actually voting on. So I just wanted to make sure that's out there, that's known, it's on record, and now we can move forward.
Councilor Alice?
Yeah, so do we have the amended one at all in front of us? Because the motion for reconsideration, I think is what you're saying, is on that one, but we don't have it in front of us, so.
We actually don't have that one in front of us. So I think if we can just understand and have it on the record that we're voting on what was approved at the last council meeting.
Yeah.
So we can go forward and have a discussion and then vote and decide what we're going to do from here. Make sense? Because the spirit of it is the same. It's, are we going to allow the mayor to go forward with the negotiations on the public safety complex? So is there any discussion? Councilor Mass?
I really want to get this to a place where it could happen. I'm actually in favor of a public safety complex as opposed to a fire station. I think, as Chairman Wiedegardner, who's no longer here, indicated, I think there are cost savings over time in having a public safety complex. I also think when you get grants that they're for public safety complexes, not for individual buildings. I spent at the request of the developer and the contractor about 2.5 hours sitting with them, going over the lease, telling them what I thought, how improvements could be made, how they might reach consensus and compromise, not only just based on my opinion, but what I felt, my read of my colleagues. And I think they made efforts. I think they made tremendous efforts to try to reach out. At the end of the day, and I think I give the mayor credit because I think this is a clever way to try to save some money. I think that's what he's trying to do. But at the end of the day, I'm stuck on a few things. And I'm stuck on the developer doesn't have the confidence that this is going to be worth the purchase price when it's done. If he doesn't have that confidence, I don't know how we can have that confidence. And they haven't even negotiated what that purchase price is. The second thing I'm more troubled by is the fact that this does not work financially unless we get state dispatch. The mayor agreed to that. This negotiation is meaningless unless he gets the negotiation done with the state, and everything I've been told until today was that could not happen prior. But the biggest problem I have with this is what was said by Mr. Walker. The mayor wouldn't agree to it, but it's because the mayor is knowledgeable enough to know that he would have a big problem if he did agree to it, and that is this is a financing instrument. This is designed to avoid prevailing wage. It will draw litigation. While there was an indication that we would be indemnified, there's no indication of a guarantee or a bond for that. And a financing instrument is something that requires 9 votes of this council, not 7. And if we continue in this direction, it only takes 7 to approve a lease. And that's not what this is. It's a financing instrument. And I think we need to be honest with each other and say, nice try. We appreciate the hard work of everyone involved, but we need to go back to the drawing board and find a new way to create a public safety complex. And it's very clear from all the library people who were here together that they don't see that as a barrier to getting their project completed.
Councilor Wheeler?
So I agree with the sentiment that this would set a precedent, and I think that's the just zooming out. My objection at this point, as the person who filed the motion to reconsider, is the precedent that this sets. There was one public forum for this this construction project that I know of. I've been on council for less than a year, but I think and assume that most multi-million-dollar construction projects have a process that goes through planning. It goes through multiple boards. It goes through public hearings. We're given options. The request for proposal is wide. So even though the result might be something that I agree with, it probably is something I agree with, I don't think the process is right for this.
Councilor Ellis.
Thank you. Yes, first of all, my apologies for my head palm that I did earlier. I was just very confused and I was not understanding what was being said, and I still don't understand, but I do apologize for the head palm or the hand palm or whatever they call that.
Thank you.
My biggest, well, I have a lot of issues with this, and I'm just going to list them, and then that's all I'm going to say, and then I'm going to wait to vote. I think that this particular, it's not about whether we need a public safety complex or not. It's about whether this particular method of doing it makes sense. And in some respects, there are some things that I think do make sense. But there are more that I think do not make sense. And there are more questions. Every time we talk about this for the last 2 meetings, more questions have come up than answers came out, in my opinion. And that's troubling for me for a project that, while, again, it's not the library and the public safety complex aren't technically linked, the two of them, one thing has to happen for the other to happen, so therefore they are essentially linked. And if you add those two projects together, it's the largest project this town has ever tried to undertake. I think it needs a little bit more thought quite a bit more thought and quite a bit more public comment. I have heard far more people say this is a bad idea in their mind, from their understanding, than I have heard people say this is a great idea. I think we need to be careful if we're going to do a project like this that we don't, just tonight we've heard things that were one thing, and then ask a clarifying question and the answer changes to the absolute opposite. For example, the dispatch. I believe either with Councilor Mass or the police chief told me the same thing at a different time. But I did also hear from him that we need a building to do it in, or else we can't do it because it won't happen at the current police department. And I'm worried that I'm worried that it wouldn't happen even if we built the building, and then now we've built the building expecting to have another 800 and whatever thousand and not having it. Now that's a really big problem if that happens. So I'm careful of the promises that are made, because without it in writing, I don't think it's something that we can decide to spend this much capital money on, or actually it's not even capital money, it's operating budget money. The next thing is, do we need it in this spot? Do we need it this size? Do we have some plans, we have some drawings. We apparently have some studies that are fairly old and maybe not outdated, but close to it, that are on the internet, on the website. But this location, of the firefighters I've spoken to, this location is not ideal. It's not ideal for their purposes. We've got to think about whether we're just doing this to do it, or whether we're doing it to make the conditions better. Because if we're moving to an unideal location simply to move, that's not really a step up. So then my concern is, this is going to be in the operating budget. It's going to be added to the operating budget. If we think that it's not going to have a financial impact, and again, that's another big thing, we still don't have the large financial picture, which apparently we're going to get in October, but we've been asking for it for many, 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 many months, and we have not gotten it. So I hope we do get it, but there again, it's going to take us, it's not going to take us one meeting to look at it and go, oh, okay, I totally get the next 20 years of debt for Greenfield. It's going to take us some time. So I think that, particularly that, is the cart before the horse, because I would be willing to bet before we can set a tax rate, we're going to be asked to fund $300,000 or more dollars out of our reserves to cover short-term interest for bonds that were not, for money that was not bonded. And that's probably going to come in the next couple of months. So we need to be very careful what we spend, because that's probably going to be happening. We can't set our tax rate until we do that, and there's a lot of money outstanding. So that's going to change the picture a whole lot, and I'm sure, at least I hope, that will be in the program that they give us on the October meeting. So anyway, I think we just need to be very careful. I think that this, while some aspects of it are good, I don't think we should be proceeding down this particular path, and that if we do want a public safety complex, we should do it ourselves. We should find a place. We should own it. And that way it can go through the same process as every other building that we've done, including this one. And I think that is how the residents and my constituents feel we should do it. So I'll be voting against it tonight.
Councilor Dolan?
I think we have a rare instance of general consensus here so far. I'd just like to say this may be the public safety complex that we need. I like it. It has a lot of advantages, the final products. I'm mainly concerned about the process. I'm concerned about how the RFP was written. I'm concerned about the fact that we only got one option. I'm concerned that the only option that we got was a lease, and we were not given any kind of comparative study for owning the property either on that site or somewhere else. And I'm concerned about the fact that a firefighter, similar to Councilor Alice, a firefighter reached out to me with a lot of concerns about this location. Apparently having not been consulted, I'm not sure what that process was. I'm concerned that the building committee hasn't formally voted on this yet also. So, but again, this may be salvageable, and it may be the thing that we need. So I'm open to voting. I'm planning to vote no on this. I would also be open to kind of tabling it indefinitely, not giving it a stamp of approval, but leaving it on the table as one option among hopefully a number of options.
Councilor Stemple?
Councilor Dolan's in my head. So just starting, like, I wish municipal finance, or at least municipal finances in Greenfield, would work in such a way that we knew what we had to spend before we were discussing projects. It makes me, I'm tired, so like my frustration probably isn't showing, but this is a repeat of the community center discussions about process, and then we moved back to the drawing board to have public comment. And we only had one option for a community center. It's just a replay of a horrible episode in my mind. So I'm in favor of tabling this resolution. I'm in favor of tabling or not voting for the firehouse resolution, simply because I can't prove or disprove anything because there's no other options. I agree with Gene Wall, give the Building Construction Committee an objective committee to this project, time to find the right answer. Prove to me that this is the best one. We'll hear finances next month when we're voting on this today. I just don't feel comfortable doing that. And then we're talking about studies, those cost some time too, those cost money. And so I wish we could also go back in time and just redo this process over, because as Councilor Dolan said, this might be the best project. I just can't prove or disprove that because I don't have anything to compare it to. And as the former counselor of Precinct 8, I do want to address Mr. Walker. Your property has been vacant as a landlord for a very long time. I grew up in Precinct 8 where your building is. The whole reason I joined City Council and ran was to revitalize my downtown and the economic development footstamp of this town. I'm disappointed that you just found it not important to really invest in that property that you owned until an opportunity like this came to the forefront. I've been fighting for businesses to come to this town for a very long time. And if they don't have a relationship with the landlord and we have a landlord problem, then that's never going to happen. So speaking to the history of the building and my passion for the downtown, I wish that there was something going on in that building other than just saying this is the only option for that building because it's vacant. It shouldn't be vacant. We're burgeoning, we're going through a renaissance, and I shared that with you, and it's not anything that a landlord should be proud of. But that being said, this building is an option, and it might be the best option for this project. I'm just using the opportunity as a representative of this community and a representative of that specific community to voice to landlords and, I guess, the importance of our downtown.
Councilor Sun?
I talked to a lot of people, not only in my precinct, but all around town, because a lot of people know me for some reason. And they weren't in favor of this the way it was set up. They said that it should be looked at more and not all of a sudden just the price brought before us and leasing. They thought we should own the building and not lease anything. And so I'd have to vote no on a public building right now. I'd have to, look at different proposals and get it laid out for us to buy, not to lease. So that's my the people I've talked to, that's how they feel.
Councilor Mayo?
Hi. I took the opportunity to speak to people even as late as this morning. I tapped people on the shoulder. I visited them in restaurants. And they basically reiterated to me what every person that I've spoken to on this is, that they are not in favor of a lease agreement, that they hadn't seen some of the particulars of it, but most of them who had seen it or heard it said that they were in favor of a library, but they were not in favor of a public safety complex. They were in favor of a fire station being built because they'd heard the decrepit state of the firehouse, and something needed to be done on that basis. But every single person I spoke to, and that includes people from all over town, and that includes people within my precinct 8 as well, which is on Wells Street, includes Wells Street, said no to the lease. And so some of the other issues that I had were the unwillingness to deal with prevailing wage. That's a pretty big thing for me and a lot of people here on this board. I'm hoping so. So I cannot, in good conscience, vote yes on this project, just for the reasons that I laid out. So I got to go with my conscience and what the members of the community has said to me. Thank you.
Councilor Lobick?
Yeah, now listening to everyone here speak, I've had the same experience. I've got emails from a lot of people here in Greenfield, especially in my precinct. I've also think we just jumped into this whole thing before thinking, and a lease I don't think is good. Most of the people I spoke to don't like a lease. It's something we should have our own property, build it ourselves, with our own money in our building. It's ours. It's not leased out to anyone else. I'm voting no.
Vice President Ricketts?
I really liked hearing what everyone had to say. It was really helpful. And I just want to explain why I'm voting yes. I'm voting yes because I want to send a message that I would like the mayor to continue looking into this more and seeing what can be done. I think the most important takeaways, and I hope that everyone is listening, is people don't want the lease. They want this also to be together. They also want the library. I feel like whatever is brought to the table next is not going to have any of the things that he has heard numerous times tonight. And I do think that this complex is important to our city. And I like that my fellow colleagues have made it quite clear what they do not like and what their constituents don't like. So I feel like that sets a framework up for the next step. So I feel like it's an easy yes for me, because if it doesn't work out, people didn't like what was being said and they want to pull out of the deal, then it's over. If the mayor can't work with the things that were said tonight, then it's over. So I don't want to just say I want to stop it and walk away. I want to say I'd like you to continue on, but please hear everything here tonight, because you know that if these things aren't taken seriously, it's going to be a no vote when it does come before us one day. So, thank you.
Councilor Gilmore?
So I think a lot of our constituents were probably messaging all of us, because I've received a lot of messages today also. But another thing that I wanted to point out is that a year ago, people were trying to find this information and nobody knew what was going on. And I know when I was running for my seat, I was embarrassed that I didn't have an answer to a question that people were asking me when I was knocking on their doors. And now it feels like we just got all of this information in the last 6 to 8 weeks. And I think that that's a big problem that we've had in Greenfield with a number of projects. And I hope that going forward, I would like the mayor and also the council to understand that that's a deal breaker for a lot of our constituents.
Councilor Dolan?
I'd also just like to contrast this process that we've gone through for the public safety complex with what I've seen for the library. I know that as early as 2016, the library was holding public forums. I got a binder in the first month that I was appointed to or that I took office as a counselor. They have been very good at communicating exactly what's happening, and they took the amount of public comment and public input that is necessary for a project like this. I know that because I am a librarian by profession, and I know the kind of process that goes into designing a space for the community. I'm concerned that, I think similar to Councilor Gilmore, we seem to have gotten all of this information at once. It makes it very hard to make a decision, and I'm concerned about the level of public input.
Councilor Mayo?
Am I correct that a no vote doesn't mean that we're telling the mayor not to negotiate or consider building a public safety complex or a fire station? We're just saying no to this particular deal. Is that correct?
That's right. I mean, I can answer that, Councilor Mouse. This is a resolution, and basically the mayor asked for it so that he knows whether or not he should go forward with the current project the way it's proposed. So if we vote no, he's not going to continue negotiating and wasting his time on
With
this
this
particular. Yes, but it doesn't take off the table other projects. It doesn't take. So this isn't. We're not voting on the money. This is simply a resolution so that he knows what direction to go in.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And I actually haven't spoken on this yet, so I will. And it's a good question for me to piggyback off on, because I don't think this is the best location for a public safety complex. It's right in the heart of town, and if you think of other places like Northampton, their public safety complexes, down on King Street, and I just can't see, emergency vehicles coming out of this type of location where there's such pedestrian traffic. We have so little pedestrian traffic right now as it is. We want to increase pedestrian traffic. So I don't know why we would want emergency vehicles going back and forth on Main Street when it could be Federal Street, or it could be where the Newton School is possibly. But I don't think that this particular location is the best place. I also agree with everybody who said we need to own the property, and the owner stated he's not going to sell. It's not for sale. So I think even tabling it would send a mixed message. I think the mayor clearly asked for a clear message, and I think if we send anything but a clear message, then there will be town time and resources wasted on continuing to go negotiate for a project that probably will never come to fruition. And so I think it's best to cut the cord now and let everybody move on. And also, I too have a problem with it not being, prevailing wage. I think we have a mixed kind of feelings about that here, but I think those of us, who are concerned about the prevailing wage, we should be concerned about that. And also that ultimately the money towards this would only have to pass through 7 counselors if this is a leased project. And for that kind of money, it should be 9 of us. 9 of us represents the town more than 7 of us represent the town. So again, I don't think this should be tabled. I think we should let everybody move on and look into other options. Councilor Stemple.
I just wanted to clarify so the resolution that we amended at last month's meeting does state construct or lease a public complex. So it actually doesn't specify this project. So if we do say no to this, the message that we're sending is that we don't support a public safety complex. At least that's how I read into it. That's not the most recent resolution that we voted on.
Councilor Mass.
While I agree with Councilor Stemple that is the language that was added, that is not what the mayor asked us to vote on. It was clear that the mayor wanted us to vote on the lease, and I think the mayor will take this as this vote, and I think our public safety personnel, both in police and fire and dispatch, will take this as a vote on a lease agreement, not as to the future of public safety or a firehouse independently.
That's important to know. This is about a lease period, so
The-
vote.
Mhm.
No, we don't want a lease.
So I agree with that this is, just to be very clear, that if we vote no, this is voting no on this particular leased project, because we have a resolution further in the pack about a different project. And again, these are resolutions. This is to send a direction to the mayor, Councilor Alice.
I just really wanted to say one thing because you brought it up and it really sort of hits home for me. You spoke of Northampton and their public safety complex. Well, they actually don't have a public safety complex. What they have is a firehouse with
Yeah.
dispatch, and then they have a separate police department, which was significantly more money. So I didn't say this to correct you.
No,
I was
it's
saying this because I've been hearing mumblings about how dispatch can't be with the fire department, it has to be with the police department. All of that's bunk. That's not true. So there are other towns that in fact our fire services would like to be like Northampton because they want to run an ambulance service, and Northampton runs an ambulance service. And I don't see any reason why the dispatch couldn't be with the fire department. So there may be an opportunity. There may be an opportunity for a firehouse with dispatch. So I just wanted to make that point because Northampton didn't do these things 50 years ago. They did these things 10, 15, 20 years ago. So it's, I think to say the things like we've been hearing it's not exactly the way that it really is.
No, and thank you for that correction. So no, no, I know. I should know because I use those meeting rooms there. So, Councilor Dolan.
I just have a point of order. We are not able to further amend what we're working on because I'm a little uncomfortable with the current language. We are explicitly saying do not pursue the construction or lease of a public safety complex.
Well, it's a resolution. It's not an ordinance. We're not.
But I guess,
And
are we
can't
able to
motion
amend
un-
it back?
No, we can't amend a motion under reconsideration. I mean, this is merely a resolution. It's not, we're not given the mayor was in good faith asking for direction from the council. And if this gets a voted no, he understands what a no vote means. And I think that's what's most important. Are we ready to vote? Councilor Gilmore.
I was going to call the question.
Oh, right, great. All in favor of calling the question? Opposed? Abstained? We're going to call the question by a roll call. Yep.
Counselor Sun,
No.
Counselor Lobeck,
No.
Counselor Alice,
No.
Counselor Pfeiffer,
No.
Counselor Dolan,
No.
Counselor Gilmore,
No.
Counselor Wheeler,
No.
Counselor Mayo,
No.
Counselor Linovich is absent. Counselor Mass?
No.
Counselor Renault?
No.
Counselor Ricketts?
No.
Counselor Stemple?
Yes.
Defeated on
So the motion is defeated. Okay, who filed this next motion for you? Counselor Dolan, page 12.
Point of order, Madam President. This next motion is a motion for reconsideration of the vote of on appointing a town auditor. My understanding of our rules of procedure is that the rules of procedure are inferior to the charter, and they're subject to the provisions of the charter. And the charter requires us to take action on this by September 15th. I believe we've gone beyond that date, so I don't believe that this particular motion is in order at this time. And that would be section 5.5-11 of the charter related to the appointment of an individual auditor by September 15th.
Let's move on to the next motion, and we'll come back to that while the town clerk can look into that. And so the next motion is motion for reconsideration filed by Councilor Mass. Page 15. And thank you for your input on that, Councilor Mass.
I move that the town council reconsiders the following motion approved by the town council on August 21st, 2018. Motion on a motion or order fiscal year 19-016. Motion on a motion by Councilor Mass, second by Councilor Leonovich. It was a majority 5 yes, 2 no, that the town of Greenfield approves the attached ordinance for the preservation of the town common.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, so any discussion about moving this motion for reconsideration so we can revote? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Oppose? Abstain? Okay, so Councilor Mass, could you read the motion on the floor?
The motion on the floor is that the town council approve the attached ordinance for the preservation of the town common.
Second?
Doesn't require one, it's already.
Okay, sorry, we were a little distracted there. Okay, let's talk about the town common. Any discussion? Councilor Mass, it's your motion.
Thank you. I appreciate the councilors entertaining this motion for reconsideration. A little unusual circumstance where the prevailing side didn't have sufficient votes to pass it under the charter. I appreciate councilors who brought that to the attention of the council because we need to do these things appropriately. I know this is a difficult measure. I have concerns, as I've expressed, and most of you have heard before, about the actual property at the town common, making sure it is maintained effectively. I do want to address a couple of small things that were brought up. First of all, almost everything in this ordinance is already a regulation of the Board of License Commissioners, but the problem is people no longer have to go to the Board of License Commissioners. Effectively, the mayor's indicated he's got to put up a sign because people don't have to go up there anymore. I think it should be enshrined as an ordinance of the town to make it clear that these kinds of uses aren't permitted so that the regulations can't change. I would indicate there's been a suggestion that this is a violation of the Eighth Amendment, that it's cruel and unusual punishment. There are several reasons why that's not, aside from the fact that the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals is the most overturned court in the country. This particular ordinance, as opposed to other ordinance, specifically allows for a fine only by non-criminal disposition, not by criminal disposition. Additionally, it gives the authority of the enforcing authority the power to issue a warning. They don't have to issue a fine. They can issue a warning and have the power to disperse with a warning. So there's no need to issue a fine of any kind. The only other thing that I would add is we did receive a letter from the chair of the Board of Health with recommendations for amendments. His recommendations for amendment, he had recommendations under number 5, limits of use, where he wanted to include and the written permission of the Board of Health. And under number 8, he wanted to make the Board of Health a enforcing authority. They want the power of this ordinance to be able to help them enforce their regulations as well. I certainly have no objection to the amendment in 8. On the amendment in 5, I think just based on experience, my experience on the Board of License Commissioners is we always, getting a permit from us always required you to get approval from all the relevant boards, which would have included the Board of Health for something that included temporary housing. I don't think that every a permit for overnight camping is necessarily temporary housing. I think there are political protests that can be overnight camping and other things that are not temporary housing, and so I would leave that discretion to that discretion to the Board of License Commissioners, but I would defer to my colleagues. I would approve this ordinance with all of the changes recommended by the chair of the Board of Health if other councilors were so inclined.
Other discussion? Councilor Dolan and then Vice President Ricketts.
So there's no way that I can support this in any form. To me, this is just an anti-homelessness ordinance wrapped up in kind of plain packaging. As an indication of that, I think protecting the memorial grounds, beds, and structures on the common is worthwhile. I have a hard time understanding, if that's the purpose of the ordinance, why we called an emergency meeting for it in the middle of a homelessness crisis. This is very, very clearly an attack on a particular group of people in the town that were unpopular, and those are our constituents, and I think that it's wrong.
Vice President Ricketts.
Oh, sorry. Councilor Mass, could you help me with your resolution? Could you tell me any of the pieces here that are covered under the Board of Licensing that you have spelled out? I'm just wondering if there's a way that we could.
I think everything on there is with the exception of the time limits are essentially and the occupation of the town, except for the sections that say you have to go and you have to go to get a permit from the Board of License Commissioners.
Yep.
All of the prohibitions are prohibitions the Board of License Commissioners already has in place. They have the power to waive their regulations in certain circumstances, and this is just a mechanism to essentially those regulations exist. Whether or not we pass this ordinance, the mayor can post them all there and they're all enforceable. Right. The question is whether or not we're explaining to the public mechanisms for them to go and get permits to get exemptions in this case. I think it would be helpful, but certainly I think we've heard that there will not be camping on the common whether or not this ordinance passes.
Okay. Yeah, what I'm trying to just make clear here is I would like, when something happens, that everybody goes to one place and it's all spelled out. And so the reason why I was asking you is the piece about the size of the bedding and all of that. So if the police come and they see, something larger or whatever, like they know right away, no, there can never be anything, right? So I feel like that maybe we keep 5 and 8 and we put in the Board of Health piece, and then the rest of it just go away since it's someplace else. Like I said, I just want the community at large to be able to, when they question it or they wonder, what's going on with this now, they go to one place and it's all spelled out. They don't go, oh, the council has this one and the Board of Licensing has this one and the Board of Health. We should have one. And I think, like you said, this is basically everything the licensing does now except for what piece again? I'm so sorry.
So except for the timing durations, and I would qualify the the size of how much what can be on there is not an issue, and it's not a prohibition here. You just have to get a permit in order to do it. So, for example, the creche would take up more space than that, but the creche would have to go before the Board of License Commissioners in order to set that up. What I would say is the code is available for everyone to read. It's publicly available. We put it online. The regulations of the Board of License Commissioners, which probably should be more publicly available, aren't as easily accessible. And I think the place most people go to look for what the law is originally is the code.
So again, I just want to be clear. So the piece we should be keeping in was the time limit and adding the Board of Health. But everything else, we can strike from here because it is actually there already. Am I correct?
Just to be clear, I think that guts the ordinance, and I don't, and I certainly don't oppose people who think the regulations are sufficient. If that's the position of people, the regulations are sufficient, that is a reasonable position to take. I don't think there's a need for an ordinance if we're going to strip out the codification of the regulations. I would just
Agreed.
as soon vote it down if that's the case. And I respect counselors who agree with that position. I respect counselors who disagree with this completely, although I do object to people who have impugned my motives.
Okay, so for me, I'm sorry if I'm still talking. I'm just going to use my left neglect as an excuse and say I only see me right now. What I want is when our police department needs to be removing people from there for whatever reason, or that these fines are carried out, that they're clear. And I really want them in one place. I think that's why I had sent this earlier in the month, asking that the licensing and the mayor and MJ Adams and the police department weigh in on it so that it is clear with everyone. I don't want people to be looking for this document and, saying, but the licensing says this, but the Board of Health says that. And I think that's what happened through this whole issue of the homelessness is it began to be a moving target because people were starting to weigh in and different things happened, and then we were closing it for this reason or that reason. So I don't mind voting for it, I guess because I don't want this to occur again to the point of, it starts with 8 and then it gets to 20 or 25 people. So I absolutely want to do all that I can to make sure it doesn't happen again. I just am feeling like, I don't know if you want this for your prize or whatever. I just don't understand why we're duplicating. That's all. That's my only thing. I want people to know that's it. Board of Licensing, this is where it stands. Or Board of Health, this is where it stands. Or people will come to council and go, so what did you counselors say? What did you want to happen? And I think it's citywide. Don't you feel, I think we're all the same, like we all should agree. The Board of Health, the License Commission, and the counselors, we should be on the same page. But I might be...
Councilor Ricketts, I actually concur completely with you, and to some extent, I think that this initiated as an emergency ordinance or an emergency within emergency meetings, not as an emergency ordinance, because there was actively damage being done to the common, and that damage has been mitigated. I see no sense for urgency now. I'd rather this not die, and I recognize I need 7 votes to pass it. I would not object if councilors do, now that it's back on the table for reconsideration. The council has the ability to refer to committee, and this has never been through committee. It hasn't had except for the Board of Health chairman weighing in, who wasn't able to discuss it with the Board of Health, and it hasn't been weighed in on by the Board of Health or by the License Commission, and I don't have any objection to those boards. I actually think it would be helpful, and they may make a stronger ordinance than I would have drafted on my own. So at this time, I'd move to refer to committee.
Yes, I like that.
Second.
So there's been a move to refer it to committee, and it's been seconded, and does anybody want to discuss that? Councilor Gilmore, though, you had your hand up a while ago.
I did, and I think I agree that we should move it to committee, but I do want to say, Vice President Ricketts, that it's not about this happening again, because it's happening still. Homelessness didn't go away. And I think that this is not solving the problem. I want to solve the problem. And I did see a lot of movement, which was good. And it's an ugly problem, it's a horrible problem, and we don't want to confront it. But I think that this, and finding people, and if someone's homeless and this is a crisis, they're not going to be looking on the town's website, trying to figure out the regulation for getting a permit. So I feel like it's tone deaf. So I would like to move it to committee, and I'd like to sort of figure out how we can help people get resources.
Okay. So move to committee is akin to tabling. So we're going to consider it non-debatable. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Could you raise your hands if you're opposed? If you're opposed to tabling this? So, okay, so there's only two. All right, so abstain, none. This is going to be moved to committee, AKA tabled, and I think it belongs at the A&O. And we'll bring it to committee chairs in October and figure that out. What is our next motion for reconsideration? Oh, wait a second, that's it. And they are still, it looks like there's a debate going on at the backside of the room on Council Mass's motion for reconsideration, so we'll wait on that. Vice President Ricketts, trees.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, something benign.
Yeah. I'll do non-controversial any day, now that I said that. It's page 12, right? 19. Give me 1 second. I spent so much time finding it. Okay. Council Alice, do you want me to wait for you? I will. Okay, I don't want to leave you out. Okay. Town of Greenfield. The Town Council move that it be ordered that the Greenfield Town Council amend the code of the Town of Greenfield as written in the strike-through attached hereto Chapter 400, Trees 400-2 and 400-9, and further amends the index of the code, and further that non-substantive changes to the numbering of the ordinance be permitted in order that it be in compliance with the numbering format of the code in the Town of Greenfield.
Motion has been made and seconded. Report from committee.
It was unanimous vote of our committee.
Is there any other discussion? Councilor Stemple.
Not really a discussion, but can someone from the committee give a headline as to what this ordinance will change?
Basically, what it says is, at the time, it was the director of DPW was the one who was handling all the tree issues, and now we want it to be the tree warden.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Councilor Gilmore.
Do you want me to read the resolution?
Yes, please.
Are we, so the recommendation is to go back to
Move that it be ordered that the Greenfield Town Council approves the attached resolution titled Firehouse Resolution, whereas the Greenfield Firehouse is in disrepair and is no longer suited to the current future needs of Greenfield. The Greenfield Firehouse has become a dangerous work environment for Greenfield's firefighters. The Greenfield Firehouse cannot be adequately rehabbed to correct structural deficiencies, and public support is lacking for a lease agreement with a private investment firm for a public safety complex. The Greenfield Town Council does not believe that a large public safety complex is necessary to meet Greenfield's current or future needs. I'm really tired. Now therefore be it resolved that the Greenfield Town Council urges the mayor to pursue a public works project to build a new firehouse for the town of Greenfield on public land, such as Shattuck Park or another similar location. Furthermore, the Greenfield Town Council insists that this project include a transparent planning process that is open to the public and a building committee that includes members of the public, at least one representative from the town council, and one firefighter.
Is there a second?
Yeah,
Motion's been made and seconded.
Yeah, and I kind of typed this out quickly and sent it in so I could get it in for committee chairs. Really, my intention here is that we explore a Plan B. I'm fine with making changes to the language or just even talking about what a Plan B looks like. I'm not attached to any of this language.
Councilor Ellis?
So, in Ways and Means, did you want to give the, Ways and Means actually had a recommendation, so.
I was
maybe-
gonna say,
Oh, that would be great.
I was gonna say, that sounds familiar. It's been a while since we talked about it. But so we actually had a unanimous recommendation to table for two particular reasons. I'll speak to mine, and then perhaps Councilor Alice can speak to his. It's the same reason why I voted yes for the before mentioned resolution tonight, in dissonance with my colleagues. The way that this resolution is written, it's limiting our options to find or seek the right solution. Therefore, I can't support it.
Councilor Alice?
And my reasoning for wanting to table it was actually twofold. And one of my reasons was that I wanted to see what happened with the other vote tonight, which we've seen what happened, and that vote makes it, as we all understand it, that vote makes it perfectly clear that we would like him, the mayor, to pursue a project that's above board, that's got public input, the whole 9 yards, which I believe that was part of what this resolution was. And we had, Councilor Gilmore and I actually had spoken on this and sent a couple emails back and forth. And I really think the heart of this resolution is to tell the fire department, we understand that we need to get you out of there, and that voting, and at the time potentially voting the way that we did vote tonight, does not signal that we do not want to find them a new location, and that we understand the perils that they see on a daily basis with their current quarters. So I'm actually still of a mind that maybe we table it, only because we now have, that will ultimately happen, I hope, because we've sent that message, that we will now start looking towards what we are going to do to rectify the situation. So that was where I was coming from, because I also shared some of the concerns that Chairperson Stemple had, as well as some other concerns of things being within the resolution that we really shouldn't put in there, because they were things that made assumptions about things that I personally could not say yet, that the firehouse can't be rehabbed. I don't know that it can't, so it's kind of the same thing that was in the resolution that we voted for the public safety complex, where there were things that were stated that I really couldn't say I knew that for certain. So those were all of my reasons. So I appreciate the sentiment of it, and I'm not adverse to voting it up or down, but it would have to be changed for me, and I think maybe to do that in a process that isn't here at almost 11 o'clock is the better time to do it. So I do agree with the sentiment.
Councilor Alice, I wanted to follow up while I was listening to you speak earlier in Ways and Means. I like when you wanted to correct the statement about it being a dangerous building, that we really need to be careful how we speak about it, that I do believe we do need a new fire station, but for just liability fact, down the line, I don't want to keep saying, I want to be careful about how council keeps speaking about that building, and then something happens, and it's like, well, council kept saying it over and over, so let's not be surprised someone now got hurt or this happened. So I do like where you're going with this, and I do think that it really speaks to what all of us want on council as a good direction on how to get this firehouse, and that there's a real open process to this whole thing. So thank you.
I was going to say, if people want to hammer out language, we can do that. Or if people just want to vote it down, I think that's fine too. Because I think that what I was trying to accomplish was just, I think it's already been accomplished. I think we talked about transparency. We talked about a public works project. And so I don't feel like this needs to go anywhere at this point.
Councilor Mass?
Councilor Gilmore, if you'd be willing to withdraw your motion, I'd withdraw my second. And then it comes off the table without a vote. I withdraw the second.
It's dead. So, but something else isn't dead. We're going back to the motion for reconsideration by Councilor Mass. It has been, we have gotten counseled by council to actually, so the Councilor Mass was correct in that our charter, of course, does trump our rules of procedures. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to use that word. So in our charter, it states that this had to have been done by September 15th. So the recommendation here is to vote no, so that we stay with our charter, to just vote no on the motion for reconsideration. That we have to make the motion, it has to be seconded, but legally we should vote no. Okay? For the audit. So, Councilor Mass, do you want to read the motion to reconsider? I know it.
Page 12. Be moved that the town council reconsiders the following motion approved by the town council on August 15th, 2015, on a motion by Councilor Stepple, second by Councilor Mass. It was unanimous that the Greenfield Town Council, pursuant to section 511, to appoint the firm of Blum Shapiro for the purpose of an outside audit.
Is there a second? Okay, all in favor? All opposed? No. Abstain? It fails. And then we have the right-of-way easement. Councilor Leonovich is not here. I'm not sure who took that as Councilor Alice.
I can take this one. I did not go to a committee. It was left off of the agenda accidentally. What page is it on? Sorry.
28.
Oh, got it. Move that it be ordered the town council pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 40 and Massachusetts law hereby authorizes the mayor to grant and execute an easement and right-of-way for the purpose of access, repair, and maintenance of the septic system at 541 Main Mohawk Trail, as shown on the attached drawing and as described in the attached documents.
And a second? Is there a second? Oh, okay. Motion's been made and seconded. Could you explain?
So what this is this is the this is a right-of-way across property that the town took for tax title from the owner, and the access to the next-door neighbor property, which is the Scotch Mist, they cannot get to their septic system without using the driveway that's on this property. And the realtor who was working on this had gotten approval and authorization from the prior owner before the prior owner knew that he didn't own it anymore. So now the town has to do it because the town took it for tax title. So this doesn't alter the property is the property. It doesn't alter the property in any way other than allows the neighbor to use the road to access their septic system to maintain it. So that's what this is.
Okay, is there any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Councilor Stempo, could you do the first readings at the end of the packet before we make our vote to go into executive session so that we can adjourn from executive session?
I love doing first readings. First reading, page 34. Authorize the payment of a bill from FY18 from the FY19 Human Resource Budget in the amount of $142.30. The sum of $1,978.90 be appropriated from the reserve fund to pay bills from the previous fiscal year. The sum of $28,357 be appropriated from the compensated absences fund 8450 to fund buybacks for unused vacation, personal sick time as provided by contract. Is it by contract or contact?
Contract.
I'm going to assume contract. The sum of $23,670 be appropriated from the contractual stabilization fund to fund provisions of terminations provided by contract. The sum of not to exceed $43,000 be appropriated from the contractual stabilization fund to fund retroactive wage provisions of a new contract agreement with Unit B of the police union.
Thank you. So, report of committees. Does anybody want to give a committee report? No. Unfinished business? Old business? I have a couple items for new business. I know that the Pledge of Allegiance ordinance passed. In the language, it doesn't start until January, but I wanted anybody to know that if you want to come forward with a group to start the Pledge of Allegiance, we can start it at any time, and I apologize for not having done that sooner. We could, if more than one person emails me and says that they have a group, then it'll just go by your precinct number. And then we'll start in earnest in January by precinct number. But if anybody has a group going forward for the next couple months, for the 3 months, please let me know. We have to reschedule the November meeting. It falls right before, it's the night before Thanksgiving. So please let me know if you have a preference when you'd want that rescheduled. I'm thinking Wednesday night because most of us reserve Wednesday night. I'm actually thinking the Wednesday night before the meeting, even though that would be the A&O meeting. Maybe the A&O meeting can meet before the council meeting, the way that the Ways and Means meets before the council meeting. So that was it. I just wanted to put that out there. And now, hang on.
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Can I
Councilor
just say
Python.
something really quick?
Of course.
I would ask that our fellow counselors keep their rude and insulting comments to yourself and not direct them toward other counselors. We're up here to do a job. We do a job for the people, not for ourselves. I think you get the same things that we do in email, and you have to act just like we do. So what was brought forward wasn't an attack under anybody or any place. So I just feel like we're all professionals of something here. I think we should conduct ourselves like professionals when we're representing the town. I'd appreciate that.
Are there any other comments or? Okay. So this is going to be a roll call vote to go into executive session, and I need somebody to read the motion on page 33.
I move that the Greenfield Town Council votes to enter into executive session for purpose 3, to discuss strategies with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if any open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigation position of the public body, and the chair so declares, and indicate that we will adjourn from executive session.
Okay, it's going to be a roll call vote.
Counselor Sund? Yes. Counselor Lobeck? Yes. Counselor Alice? Counselor Pythram? Yes. Counselor Dolan? Yes. Counselor Gilmore? Yes. Counselor Wheeler? No. Counselor Mayo?
Yes.
Counselor Mass?
Yes.
Counselor Renault?
Yes.
Sorry, President Renault. Vice President Ricketts?
No.
Counselor Stemple? Yes, you have a majority.
The motion passes. We'll go into executive session, and we will adjourn from there.
All of our productions at GCTV are sponsored in part by Bay State Health, providing the care you and your family need when you need it close to home. Visit them online at baystatehealth.org. Greenfield Savings Bank. Visit them at 400 Main Street in Greenfield. Call them at 774-3191 or go online to greenfieldsavings.com. Greenfield Community College, providing access and excellence in higher education in the Pioneer Valley. Visit them at gcc.mass.edu. The Hammond Family. The Hammond family are longtime supporters of Greenfield Community Television. New Fortune Chinese Restaurant on the Mohawk Trail in Greenfield. Visit them online at newfortunema.com. Call them at 772-0838 and check them out on Facebook. Real Cleaning Services, cleaning Hampshire and Franklin County since 1972. We don't cut corners, we clean them. Check them out online at realclean.com. Call them at 413-422-1143. People's United Bank, located at 45 Federal Street in Greenfield. You can call them at 774-3713 or visit them online at peoples.com. The Solar Store of Greenfield, replacing fossil fuels and nuclear power one home at a time. Visit them at 23 Fisk Ave. Call them at 413-772-3122 or visit them online at solarstoreofgreenfield.com. Thank you to our sponsors for supporting all of GCTV's productions.